Gentlemen, welcome to Midwest City Council, the 25th of January, or 26th January version. Thank you for being here. We're going to go ahead and call this meeting to order. I want to introduce Cadet Striegel from Carl Albert High School, ROTC program. She'll be leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance. She is unsure exactly what, she is a senior at Carl Albert, unsure exactly what she wants to do. She gave me several options: dance, choreography, or the military. So she's leaving her options open. I would ask you to stand at this time and ask Mr. Sullivan to come forward and lead us in the invocation.
I ask you to bow your heads, please. Almighty Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for this occasion and this council. Father, we thank you for their willingness to volunteer and to serve in this capacity, Lord, and we ask your blessing of wisdom and discernment be upon them tonight in the difficult decisions that they have before them. Father, I pray that those decisions are made for the good of the whole. Father, I ask that you continue to be with this great city, its leadership, its management, all the great services, those who provide all the great services for the citizens of this city, and those who provide all the public safety needs. Father, we are hurting as a community tonight with the loss of some folks, and we have some heavy hearts. We ask you to be with Bobby Holland's family. We ask you to be with Deanna Canfield and her family. And Father, we have many among us who are sick and suffering from illness and disease and this horrible virus that's attacking our world. Father, we ask for a quick healing for Donna Aiken as well. Father, we thank you so much for the men and women who are sacrificing all over the world tonight to defend our freedom. Father, we ask that you be with them and grant them peace and safety. Bless those who are leading us as a nation and as a state in the decisions they make, and that they be in accordance with your will. We thank you so much for the ultimate example of sacrifice above self through your Son and the giving of him for us and the blood that was shed on the cross for our sins. We no other way to say thank you, Lord, but to say just that. Thank you. We ask these favors in his holy name. Amen. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. You can be seated. Thank you, Cadet Striegel.
This is my partner, Cervantes.
Welcome. You're a little late. That's okay. The Air Force does forgive.
I'm very sorry, sir.
Thanks for being here. Okay, we start with community-related announcements. Before we get into it, we did lose a huge advocate of this city and our police department, Bobby Holland. She was one of the neighborhood watch presidents in the original mile. Had been with the program since 1995, since it began. She was a fiery young lady that had a passion for not only the city of Midwest City, but for the police department. And I had the pleasure of working with her for many years, and sadly she went home to be with the Lord this morning at 8 o'clock. I would ask that whatever your persuasion is, that your thoughts and prayers be with the Holland family. That's one that can't be replaced, and we are all better people for knowing her and working with her. With that being said, Mr. Lyon, the floor is yours.
So, community announcements. The second round of the Midwest City Memorial Hospital Authority Fiscal Year 2021 Community Improvement Grant Program is open. We went through an initial round and we're going through a second round of grants. So the application instruction can be downloaded from the city's website at midwestcityok.org or midwestcityok.biz for details and instructions. The applications are due by 5 p.m. on February 15th, and they're due in the city manager's office here in City Hall in this building on the second floor. Businesses and nonprofit organizations seeking financial relief from losses realized as a result of COVID-19 pandemic are encouraged to apply. February 15th is our annual Daddy-Daughter Night. We're not doing a dance this year due to the pandemic. We're moving to a virtual platform for this year. We're offering a box of goodies to make this night a special night of crafting, dancing, and bonding. A ticket will purchase the box of goodies and a Zoom link to join others for a dance party from 6 to 8 p.m. on the 15th. For more information and purchase tickets, go to www.facebook.com Midwest City Park Sand Rec, or you can go to our website and it'll have the link. The Midwest City Volunteer Income Tax Assistance Program, called VITA, will be by appointment only this year. We're still doing the program, but once again, no walk-ins will be served this year. All clients will need to make an appointment by calling 739-1239 and leave a message with contact information. A VITA scheduler will then contact you to set up an in-person appointment. A virtual tax preparation option along with self-serve options are also available for those interested. For more information, contact our grants management program at 739-1216 or go to our website for that more information. The Regional Transportation Authority of Central Oklahoma, called the RTA, which Midwest City is a member, is hosting a town hall meeting on Thursday, January 28th at 6:30 p.m. via Zoom. And this town hall is going to discuss the launch of the transit system plan for its 6 member cities. And so this is the light rail that you've read about in the paper. So they're getting to a point where they're going to have town hall meetings. So if you're interested in that, January 28th via Zoom, you can join that meeting, and it's on the rtaoklahoma.org projects is the connection, or you can go through our website. And I'm sure, where's Billy at? We have a connection via our website as well. Is that correct? Yes, sir. Okay. And then finally, Mr. Streets, our Public Works Director, Paul Streets, is going to give us a little bit of an update on the debris cleanup, where we stand at this point.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Mayor, Council, for your patience. It's almost hard to believe that we had an ice storm back near Halloween, isn't it? Shocking. Thankfully, it's getting harder and harder to tell as every week goes by because more of that stuff disappears. I have great news tonight. We can see the light at the end of the tunnel, and no, it's not a train. We are absolutely near the end. The first pass was completed, and the second pass, as you know, in the last 3 sections, Midwest Boulevard out to Sooner Road, 36th Street down 29th, began on the 25th. What I want to let you all know is that their expectation, originally we said February 8th or 9th is when they'd be finished with everything. I just got word today, about 2 hours ago, I sat down with the contractor, subcontractor, and met with the contractors, and they're telling me that we will be done, they will be wrapped up by 5 February, Friday, 5th of February. Is that good news? Now, obviously, that didn't happen by itself. There was a lot of effort. I'm not going to go through all of the long list of people. We'll do that at another date, but there are a lot of people that helped make that happen. I appreciate your support and your patience. And again, a lot of you have reached out separately or, to try to communicate with your constituents, and I really appreciate your willingness to communicate and talk with them. I know it's not always easy. We may not always have the answers that they want to hear, but the good news is we are near the end. If there are questions, there are 3 sections that I want to talk about specifically. C2, D2, and D1. Those are 3 areas that were the last to get picked up. They're the ones that got picked up literally. The last little bits of it were picked up this week. We're going to do a call out. I've had a chance to talk to the CMO a little bit. There'll be a call out using Everbridge to those citizens to make sure to remind them that we will be finishing up next week. So they've got a weekend, a full weekend, and the rest of this week to get material out for that second pass. The good news is they had the longest amount of time to get stuff to the curb. They had a lot of people may not have had that much time. I know people that lived out in, for instance, Ward 6 did not have as much time to get stuff to the curb. They've had a lot more time to get to the curb. The good news is we will contact them the best way, kind of make sure that it's focused in that area. They'll get a heads up that we're going to be coming to get the rest of it. And also good news, our quarterly curbside bulk waste collection resumes February 8th. We'll be doing a push out that was confirmed today. We coordinated with the solid waste supervisor, had a chance to talk to Vaughn, and we will indeed restart that process so that it will go back to normal, pick the stuff up. We know there's going to be a lot of vegetative material at the curb, but that's okay. If they have questions, please direct them to our website or to the Public Works office, 739-1066 if they have questions. But the good news is we'll start that back up Monday, February 8th. I would entertain any questions if you feel like it's appropriate.
Any questions from the council? Our guys, it's amazing. I mean, I don't know of any other cities that have completed the first round yet. So some cities haven't even started because they're still in the bid process. We are anticipating we're going to spend between $8 and $8.5 million, at which point we'll have a 75% reimbursement from FEMA, and the 25% will be from the city, or potentially the state may kick in a little bit to that. So it is not it's not a free ride for anybody, even as we go through this process. As far as the city's concerned, we still are expending dollars. Our employees have worked tremendous hours, tremendous overtime to accomplish this, and next, when we get finished, we'll go through some of the statistical numbers of how many man hours it took for our employees just to stay up with all the contractors. But they've done a yeoman's job, and we appreciate your leadership, Paul, on this cleanup program.
Thank you for the support, sir.
Awesome job.
Good job,
Yeah, good job.
Ms. Eads, you have anything to offer this evening? No? Okay. Everything good in Midwest City High School? Christine, you got something?
I would just like to say thank
Busting at
you.
the seams, aren't you?
I'd like to say thank you to everyone that tuned into 1220 for the Midwest City MLK Pearl Breakfast. It was on the 18th, and we had the mayor was speaking and our city manager. So it was a really good program, radio broadcast, and so thank everyone for participating, and to the mayor and the city manager. Thank you.
Thank you, Christine.
Good job, Christine. And next year, we'll be back in person at the Reed Center
Yes, Sheraton.
for breakfast.
Does anyone else have anything for the good of the order? Hearing none, we'll go into our consent agenda. These items are placed on the consent agendas so the council, by unanimous consent, can approve routine agenda items by one motion. If any item proposed does not meet with the approval of the city council or members of the audience wish to discuss an item, it will be removed and heard in regular order. I must ask that whoever makes the motion, we pull item number 2, and it will be placed at the top of the discussion.
Move to approve with the exception of item 2.
Second.
I got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Motion carries.
Consent item 2.
Item 2, report on our audit. Mr. Lyon.
So discussion and consideration of accepting the financial audit of the city of Midwest City as of and for the year ended June 30, 2020. We have Mike Gibson here, who represents our audit firm. And they've changed names again, so I will.
No, we haven't yet.
Used to be Colin Reed, that's all.
That's right. Well, thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Tim, members of the City Council. It's a pleasure to be here. And, excuse me, so we, our firm, RSM, did the audit of the City of Midwest City for the year ended June 30, 2020, the audit of the financial statements. And the audit was performed in accordance with the auditing standards issued by the American Institute of CPAs and government auditing standards issued by the Comptroller General of the United States. And the objective of our audit is to issue an opinion on the financial statements of the city to determine whether or not they're free from material misstatement, whether due to fraud or error, and to provide reasonable assurance, not absolute assurance, because we don't test every transaction. We do sampling and everything, but it's still a very high level of assurance. And it also gets broken down. We audit like the major fund, like the general fund, police fund, fire fund, the Midwest City Municipal Authority. All of those, we audit down to those levels and issue opinions on whether those funds are fairly stated. And we issued an unmodified opinion on the financial statements, meaning that, in our opinion, we believe the financial statements are free from material misstatement. So that is the best assurance that we can provide, and we're pleased to be able to that. And the city should be, the city council should be proud of the management and staff for the job that they did. Our audit, since it's in accordance with government auditing standards, we also perform tests and evaluation of internal controls over the financial reporting and on compliance with laws and regulations. And if there's any significant deficiencies or material weaknesses in internal controls, we're required to report those to you in writing. And if there's any non-compliance with laws and regulations that are material to the financial statements, we would report those to you. And we did not, the results of our audit did not identify any material weaknesses or any material non-compliance. So again, it's a very good audit of the financial statements. This year, the audit also covered a single audit of an audit of the city's major federal programs in accordance with the Single Audit Act and uniform guidance. We audited two programs this year: the CDBG grant and the new assistance to firefighters grant. And we tested for compliance, and we did not have any exceptions. We issued an unmodified opinion saying that the city complied with those requirements. The CARES Act funds will be this year. So anyway, that is all of the, that's really the highlights of our report. Like I said, it was a good audit. The city's finance team and grants program team and everybody were ready for us and prepared, and we didn't have any disagreements or difficulties working with them, and we appreciate that. So
We'd like to recognize Frank Chin, the Assistant Finance Director, who is dedicated to working on this project, and
Yep.
he did a fantastic job, and we appreciate having a clean audit from the management perspective.
yeah, be glad to answer any questions if there are any.
Any questions? Chair to entertain a motion to approve the report.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention, motion carries. Thank you for being here, and thank you for that good report.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Mr. Mayor, before we jump into discussion items, I have a point of order. It looks like we're going to have a number of people come up and speak this evening at the podium based upon the gallery. And if they could leave their mask on when they're speaking, because we're not sanitizing the podium and the mic between speakers,
No
I think
problem.
would be beneficial.
You bet. As we get to the public discussion of these items, please leave your mask on when you come to the podium. Thank you. We'll move into now discussion on item number 2. Mr. Lyon.
So PC 2056, public hearing with discussion, consideration, approval of a resolution for a special use permit to allow the use of communication services
I didn't realize what I did.
in the R6 single-family detached residential district for the property described as a part of the northwest quarter of Section 36, Township 12 North, Range 2 West, located at 600 North Douglas Boulevard. The item was continued from the October 27th, 2020, and the November 10th, 2020 City Council meetings. Mr. Harless.
Thank you, Mr. Lyon. Yes, this request is for a special use permit to allow the placement of a 110-foot monopole cell tower with a 10-foot lightning rod for Verizon Wireless at North Douglas and Cardinal. Included with the agenda packet is the determination of no hazard or air navigation from FAA. Staff received, having trouble Staff received an email from Tinker Planning Staff on August 25th, 2020, stating that this location is outside the APZ zone and does not violate the imaginary surfaces. If approved, the base of the tower should be locked to the public. Several residents spoke in opposition to this request at the Planning Commission. Action is at the discretion of the City Council. Of course, I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Does anyone have any questions, and ladies and gentlemen, so I can clarify the record, we still, the numerical system of the discussion items remain the same. That was discussion item number 1, and nothing changed. So with that being said, is there any questions, Mr. Harless? Yeah, we've got a couple of people. This is a public hearing and public discussion. We have 2 people that have signed up to talk on this particular item. Now, ladies and gentlemen, although we don't impose time limits on our speakers, we had asked that, in the best interest of time, that your statements be succinct, and please don't ramble. Make your point to the council, and we'll be glad to hear all your remarks. Also, the decorum of the council will be maintained at all times.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Jones?
I was just going to say, Mr. Mayor, that the applicant is here in case there's any questions of the applicant.
Okay. Will the applicant go ahead and step forward, and please state your name and address for the record.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. My name is Ralph Weingarten from Falk and Foster at 678 Front Avenue Northwest, Grand Rapids, Michigan 49504. And I'm here on behalf of Celco Partnership, doing business as Verizon Wireless, the applicant. We're proposing a 110-foot monopole, as was mentioned, on the southeast corner of the intersection of Douglas and Cardinal Place. This is where the Highland Park Baptist Church is located. The church sits closest to the boulevard, and then there's kind of an open grassy area to the east, and then a treed area. And this proposed pole will be within that area of trees. We'll also place an 8-foot board fence and landscape buffer of shrubs as needed to ensure that the equipment at the base of the tower is fully screened. The Verizon Wireless antennas will be located at the top of the pole, but we'll also have room to accommodate at least 3 additional future providers from the other companies that may be interested in this location. As was mentioned by Mr. Harless, the FAA determined that it's not a hazard to air navigation, and Tinker Air Force Base has also reviewed the project. Having good wireless infrastructure benefits the community as a whole, especially in this time with the COVID situation where a lot of people are working or learning from home. In addition to supporting business and personal use, it will also have a public safety benefit. These days, most E911 calls also come from cell phones, and having this infrastructure in place ensures that there's a quick response to health emergencies, accidents, fires, weather events, and other types of emergencies. This project meets all of your ordinance requirements, including the 3/4 height setback from all property lines. Also, to minimize any perceived impact, we've chosen a monopole design, which is the least impactful type of design. There's no guy wires. It's not like a lattice or oil derrick type design, just the thin steel monopole. It makes use of the natural vegetation as well as the board fence I mentioned and landscaping. There's not going to be any lights on it at night, so it'll be a dark site, no flashing lights. It will not generate any traffic, noise, odor, etc. The area of the request in the comprehensive plan is noted as public, semi-public. We feel this proposal is consistent with the comprehensive plan. It meets all the requirements of your ordinance and received recommendation of approval from the Planning Commission. So we respectfully request your approval of the special use permit tonight. And I'm again happy to answer any questions at the appropriate time. Thank you.
I'm Councilman Bowen, and I'm in Ward 3, where you wanting to put the tower. I've had meetings with my constituents out in the area. They have some deep concerns. I also have some concerns about the tower in that area, because we got one less than a mile from there, a big tower there already. And the consideration and things of this nature within a community of that size, and you got senior citizens there. I mean, I know it's a time right now where people are working from home, and the G5 and all that, whatever it is, it's faster for them for their computers and things. But in the neighborhood where that's going to be, I have some issues with that. Number one, I would not want any commercial advertising or signage to be allowed on that cell tower. A tower that's not operated or in use and continue it over 12 consecutive months, she can be considered abandoned. And the owner of the tower should be required to pay all the expenses to remove that tower. Now, I also think that the city should be able to do quarterly checks on it to make sure everything's in order and operational on it. There should be a fence around there for the power supply. And it should be chain link, not wood, not lattice or anything like that, if that was to happen. But I know that I have some constituents here tonight that want to talk. And I know that Pat has some things that he wants to say too. But it's really heartaching for your constituents and for me for that to be there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Mrs. Bowen and I have worked on this over the last couple of months, because this has come up twice pretty recently. There was another tower that came up, and that was the first time I knew anything about it, and then the second time it came up, and then there was information on there, and basically, whether we want to admit it or not, our hands are tied. The federal government has ruled that we have to allow this to happen. But the same ruling that the federal government made does allow us to put some restrictions on it. And I want to concur with what Ms. Bowen said, no signage of advertisement. If it's not working in 12 months, it doesn't need to be there, and you should take it down. The deal with I think we need to be very specific about the fence. In the reason that I personally think a chain link fence is better than a stockade fence is that the stockade fence weathers very quickly. Chain link fence would last longer in Oklahoma, and it also, for security reasons, the police department driving by there can't see anything behind that stockade fence. If the chain link fence is in at night and they see somebody behind there, it's not supposed to be there. It's a easier security deal. And I think that we, as a council, need to look at, in the future, coming up with an ordinance so that there are some specific guidelines. It's here. We're going to have to deal with it. Let's make it as least intrusive on our neighborhood as possible. And the other thing I think is important is that we're going to put a tower. It's 110 foot in the air. We've got high winds. If we have a wind event, I think that the city, however we want to word it, should require these people to have it inspected, because it may not come down during that wind event, but the next wind event, it may not be structural sound. And I know they're meant to come down and not fall over, but I think we need to, if they're here, we need to do everything in our power to protect the people that are around it. And I think that if it passes, I think this is the start of what we should do from tonight, and in the future, in the very near future, look at doing an ordinance that deals with these concerns so that it doesn't come up again.
I'd like to add a little bit to what Pat said. If this passes and if everybody agrees, every quarter you guys let the city know if that cell tower is still operational or not. And if it is not operational, what day it went non-operational, so that 12-month timeline can kick in from that date.
Thank you all for your comments. We are agreeable to the conditions that have been mentioned. the no commercial advertising or signage. If it's abandoned for 12 months, it's got to be taken down. Checks every quarter to make sure everything's still operational and operating according to the conditions of the permit, and a switch to a chain link fence design. Those are all things we would agree to.
And some site proofing like the shrubbery around it, as you mentioned too.
Yes.
And I think we need to make sure, because who's going to maintain that shrubbery? Is that you or is that the church?
The Verizon technical people that will come out periodically to inspect the site would be in charge of weed control within the compound and making sure the shrubbery is healthy.
And I don't want you or anybody else to think we're trying to be difficult with you, but we have constituents, and it's just not Espy's ward. You know, Sean had it a month or two ago. There's going to be other wards that are going to deal with this, and I think this is something, this is the way of the future, and we need to get ahead of it, and this is step one.
Yep.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. Thank you, Pat, Espy. We do have two citizens that wish to address the council. Mr. Jones, could you come forward?
Yeah, just real quick, Mayor, to maybe ease some of your concerns. There's no advertising permitted on these anyway, if that helps. And then also, the special use permit is invalid if it goes for 12 months without being used. So that's helpful.
Thank you, Mr.
But
Hollis.
how would we know if it wasn't being used if they didn't tell us?
Right, and so we appreciate that they have to quarterly say that it's been used or not.
Mr. Jones?
Members of the City Council, citizens, my name is John Jones. I'm the pastor of Highland Park Baptist Church, and I just wanted to address some of the rumors and kind of give some background as to how we got to where we are this evening. First off, I'd like to dispel the rumor that Highland Park is hurting for money and that this was a ploy for us to generate revenue. That is very far from the truth. We are solvent, we're doing well. And so we'll submit to whatever the will is of the City Council, whether it's in favor or not, with regards to the tower. But I would also add that we did not expect the opposition that we have acquired in this effort. And we have, in this process, this is going on about 18 months now, that we've been working with this gentleman's organization and Verizon. And in that process of time, we have hired the counsel of a lawyer to go through the contracting, walk us through this, trying to do this the right way. And so that's our intent as we go through this, is to do this the right way. And I would add to that, I do concur with the 3 points that were brought up concerning the fence, et cetera. And so that's pretty much the extent of what I needed to share with everybody. But at the same time, we didn't expect this opposition, and so we'll submit to the will of the city.
Thank you, Pastor, for being here. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Sir, don't take our comments at all that we were opposed to this. I think everybody up here realizes that this is the way of the future. These towers are needed, especially with people working at home, the internet. We just want to make sure that we protect the people around it, including you, so that there is some standards, there is some ordinances in place that we can hold the next guy accountable. And it may not be somebody as reputable as Verizon. It could be somebody that we just need to make sure that we're doing our due diligence to protect the citizens. So it's not, what we said today is not an opposition of it, it's just to protect the citizens.
I understand. And with that, we would not go to the extent we have if we had concerns about health and so forth, because we have youth and elderly as well, and we do understand of the new residents, the senior center next to us, so we share those same concerns. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Jones.
Yep.
Mr. Larry Bennett?
Sir, I have nothing to add. I'm good.
Well, thank you for being here, Mr. Bennett.
Yes, sir.
Does anybody have any further? I'm sorry?
Good evening to everyone, Mayor, City Council, and the community. I am Jackie Parks. I live less than 110 feet from this tower. We are actually closer to the tower.
Could you state your address for me? I'm sorry.
9100 East Cardinal Place.
Thank you. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
And the church and my husband and I share the lot that the cell tower is going to be on, but we live there every day. We have grandkids. We have underlying conditions. We are not clear that if the wind comes by that 110-foot pole hits our home, where do you help us? I'm very concerned that this tower is going to be placed there, and it feels a lot like the decision was already made, just like you said, because they've been digging holes and doing things in preparation before we could even get to this meeting. I would suggest going forward that we think about some type of board that consists of city people as well as the community to keep Midwest City where we want it to be. We don't want our housing to go down and depreciate. We want to work with you guys however we can, and I think it's only fair that you give us a voice as well, you know, as an opinion to help Midwest City to grow. We're very concerned that senior homes moved up. I love seniors. I work with them every day, but now I have no privacy. I have lights coming through my home at night from where they have to have night lights. Now you're putting up the cell tower. It's hard. And I really would appreciate it if you all could maybe possibly get a board where we can get bylaws and get a means to help the citizens as well as Midwest City, because we're part of what makes it grow and what makes it happen. So any consideration with any of this, and I appreciate the pastor talking, but my concern is that they're only there a couple of times a week. We're there every day, all day. And so we're affected. Like I said, it's just a few feet from where we are. That kind of hinders my growth in what I want to do in retirement, because now I've got a pole that I've got to deal with. And so I appreciate you all listening to me tonight, and anything I can do to help create that board, because I know in other states they've done that, and it really does help, and it makes people feel in the community like they're a part of the decision making instead of just what the federal government says. Thank you so much for listening to me tonight, and I hope that in this, when things come up, that we have a voice. Am I able to call you and say, this is happening, what's going on here, and get an answer? So thank you very much.
Thank you for being here, ma'am.
I have a question for the city attorney when she's finished.
Go ahead, Ms. Eads.
Ms. Poole, this one's coming to you. Sorry, I'm not sure if you heard me while you were talking to Councilwoman Price Allen. So if I understood what Councilman Burns said a minute ago, we do not have a choice but to approve this cell tower. Is that correct? Other than we can put limitations on it?
Right. The applicant provided materials that explain the federal regulations, and that if they meet the limit for radiation and the heights, and the applicant has an email indicating that he does comply with those, that under the federal statute, those those areas of objections cannot be used by a city to prevent it from being built.
But we
So
could,
Mr. Burns' summary of it was very on point.
but are we still not entitled to have a opinion, if you will, with regard to where the tower is placed, just because it meets all the requirements to be built on a given site? Doesn't mean that we have to put it on that same site. Isn't that correct? So, for example, let me just give you a hypothetical, because that might have been a little wordy. If instead of putting it on the church's lot, we felt it was better to put it on a storage facility lot that was less proximate to a more densely populated area, for example, less proximate to a main thoroughfare, would we not be entitled, pursuant to our ordinances, to direct in that direction?
The issue isn't our ordinances, it's whether we are in compliance with the federal guidelines. And has the applicant provided the materials that kind of lay out, the grounds to object are very limited.
So we don't have an option but to allow the applicant to put this cell tower in this particular location?
Correct. As Mr. Byrne indicated, you can't, if they meet the criteria of the radiation and the height, and they meet the criteria set out for the type of tower, and again, under the federal guidelines, it talks about how far you can be from residents and population, depending on the height or the type of, radiation is the wrong word, but the applicant provided information indicating they were in compliance with that, and I keep referencing back to Councilmember Byrne, but he's correct. You can request specific criteria in regards to how they install it, but whether or not they can install it, once they meet the federal guidelines, the municipality cannot overrule the federal guidelines with an ordinance.
Right, but we're not changing the guidelines. We're not asking to change the guidelines. We're just talking about the suitability of the situs of the cell tower.
Mm-hmm. Right, but if you mean by suitability whether or not they can install it, then the federal guidelines answer that question for us. However, how they install it, as Mr. Byrne indicated, the city can address some of those, how it will be screened, how it blends into the neighborhood, image issues can be addressed by the city. Location and installation, if they meet the federal requirements, cannot. Do you feel I've answered your question?
I think you're trying. I mean, I find this incomprehensible. I mean, I truly find it incomprehensible that we have citizens who are before us that have objection to the placement, and we're saying, sorry, there's nothing we can do because federal law dictates we have to accept it in this particular location. I understand it meets that and that we could. I'm having trouble with the idea that we have absolutely no say in that placement over the contribution of the citizens that are going to be forced to see this thing, deal with this thing on a daily basis.
I would refer you, because the applicant provided the materials, I would refer you back to the applicant in terms of the federal guidelines regarding this and the email that the applicant provided indicating which criterias they met for this particular tower.
Is there a legal opinion from the applicant on the issue? Like, do you have a...
He provided the materials that explain what recourses or not the city has in regards to the installation.
Yeah, I don't know that I'm equipped or have the authority to give a legal opinion myself, but I did point
What-
to the Telecommunications Act of 1996, which is 47 U.S. Code, Section 332, subsection C7B, Roman numeral 4.
Okay, let me stop you for a second. What page of the material is this on in our packet?
It's within pages 2 or 100 and, let me see where it begins. $183, I believe, through,
I know the ordinance was on the very back of that handout, that local government guide to radio frequency.
Heather, can I add something to while you're saying it? And that's why it's extremely important that going forward, we probably come up with an ordinance dealing with this, because if you look at, there's ordinances, even in the state of Oklahoma, where cities have adopted ordinances to deal with situations like this, where they will require the applicant, we could have required him, if we had an ordinance, we could have required him to provide us a statement that he reached out to somebody else that had a tower close by where they couldn't co-locate. Well, since we don't have an ordinance in place, we can't force that right now, is the way I read it. It's the ordinance out of Salisaw, is the one that I found that was closest to Oklahoma. So that's things that we, in the future, may be able to do. But right now, we're not equipped to do that.
Sir, what's the site selection criteria for a cell phone tower? I may be opening up a can of worms I don't want to, but how does a Verizon decide that they need a tower and where?
It's different for each location depending on what their objective is. In the more rural areas, they're looking for a much taller tower that reaches a much larger area. In the urban areas now, it's mostly infilling in between existing sites, so it's quite a limited radius that they give us, and they usually give us a latitude and longitude in sometimes an eighth of a mile radius, sometimes a quarter mile radius in urban areas, sometimes it's bigger in the rural areas. And they say we need something of this height within this area, and go out and ask property owners and find something that's leasable, zonable, constructible, and then we'll review that and see if we accept the candidate. So that's kind of the process for the site acquisition firm.
I found it odd that you said this is a dark site. Having lived around Tinker Air Force Base my entire life, everything over there over 2 stories has got a light on top of it. How do we circumvent that issue?
In this case, this location does not require a light. The FAA and Tinker are both indicated at 110 feet. It's far enough away from the flight path that they're not requiring a light for this one. So in this case,
I found that funny. All right. Is there any further questions of the applicant?
Well, I want to ask this. Why are we voting on something when we have no jurisdiction on it? I mean, we only can vote for what we want to implement, but we can't vote whether we want this tower or not.
Luckily, we could add some of the restrictions that we did tonight.
Well, yeah, we can vote on restrictions, but we cannot, we can't.
I think a
really
lot of
vote.
this conversation is for the future, to kind of, Billy, get ready.
Well, that entire discussion goes back to the federal guidelines that we do not have a lot of latitude, and on where these towers are, on where that once the site selection, we don't have a lot of latitude. And I'm sure since in the Communication Acts in 1996, it has been court tested on numerous occasions.
So what motion are we going to make?
We're
can make a
voting to
motion to
approve
pass
the
or
site,
deny.
but we're also adding restrictions
onto
onto the approval. So
I think a lot of this conversation was, Billy, you kind of get the will of the council going forward, that we need to get some stronger ordinances about site proofing, how to communicate with us if it goes black and everything else.
Yes, sir. And the reason they're heard in the community is because although Heather gave an excellent description and Councilman Byrd both did a good job, there are some times when there's a reason to turn it down in the community that maybe the applicant or Verizon don't know about and only the community would know about. Let's say we're getting ready to put up another airport or something there and it would be in the way. It would be an extreme example, but there are some reasons out there, and that's why they go through the review process.
Okay.
So when a motion's made, Heather, do we need to list every single one of the additional issues, or can we just make a motion that says approval subject to all the recommendations?
I would, for the sake of the city clerk, go ahead and indicate the issue in regards to the fencing, as Mr. Harless pointed out, the advertising concern, and the making sure that it is removed if it's not used for 12 months is already addressed within our ordinances. However, the quarterly checks and the type of fencing and the implementation of site proofing with shrubbery is not.
Nor is them letting us know in writing once every quarter whether it's gone black or not.
Yes.
So you would like to
include
have
that in
every
the
single
motion.
one of those things there. Do you have it, Pat?
So will we say motion to pass,
Okay.
motion for, based
That
on
being
the
said,
federal
Chair, I'd entertain a
regulations?
motion.
Do you have a motion, Pat?
I can make the motion off of what SB, the worksheet that SB and I both have that we've put together, and we provided the clerk with it already, so that if it got this far, she would know what we were talking about. So I can make a motion to pass this. I have a copy of it, Matt. Okay. Make a motion to pass under the following conditions. Number one, that there's no commercial advertising or signage allowed on the cell tower. Condition number two, any tower that is not operated, particularly this one, or used for a continuous period of 12 months, even though it's in our ordinance, shall be considered abandoned, and the owner of the said tower shall be required at his expense to remove the tower and all associated buildings, power supply, fence, and other items associated and permitted with the tower. If not removed, the City of Midwest City may contract a removal and the expense passed on to the owner. Quarterly checks will be done and that information provided to the city to assure that the tower is still operational. The third one is the tower facility shall be visibly buffered by a hedge of low-maintenance evergreen plant material or other approved opaque screening material which effectively screens the view of the tower, building, fencing, and accessory facilities. The tower owner shall be responsible for all costs of the equipment, labor, and materials associated with the screening. The fence will consist of a chain link fence, a minimum of 8 feet. The tower owner will be responsible for all costs associated with the landscaping requirements. Upon completion of the tower construction, screening, and landscaping, all maintenance and landscaping and screening shall also be the responsibility of the tower owner. Plants that die or do not effectively buffer the tower, screening, or building power equipment shall be replaced within a reasonable time, not to exceed 3 months, at the tower owner's expense. Failure to maintain the plant shall constitute a fine to the landowner. And the City of Midwest City may at any time request the tower owner to perform additional inspections if damaging winds, earthquakes, and other natural phenomenon or unexpected damage occur that may cause structural failure of the cell tower or facilities. If upon inspection the tower owner determines the facility fails to comply with such applicable codes and such failure constitutes a danger to the persons or property, the owner of the tower must immediately notify the City of Midwest City. The owner will have 30 days to bring the facility into compliance with the applicable codes and standards. Failure to bring the facility in compliance within 30 days shall constitute a cause of removal of the facility at the owner's expense.
Second.
I've got a motion and I got a second. Any further discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Opposed?
Abstain? Abstain.
We got
I
2
myself,
abstentions.
too.
I'm sorry?
Likewise, I sustain.
We got 3 abstentions. Motion carries.
Here, we will add the future cell tower ordinance to our ordinance review committee for review
Okay, thank you.
in the future.
Move to discussion item 2. Mr. Lyon.
PC 2065, discussion and consideration approval of the final plat of Ryan's Ridge, described as a part of southwest quarter of Section 6, Township 11, North, Range 1 West, addressed at 10332 Southeast 10th Street. Billy?
Thanks again, Mr. Lyon. Yeah, before I get started, I wanted to thank Mr. Ergenbright, Mr. Bryant, and Mr. Box. Before the last planning commission and some of these items you're going to hear tonight, there was a lot of conversation about the sidewalks and the obligation and the ordinances of taking them over and maintaining them as a city versus putting them in as a builder or as a developer, and then the builder comes in and tears up the sidewalks while they're building the house and putting in the lawn and stuff. And I think through that process, we came up with a good policy or a compromise in that situation. And that includes the sidewalk plan, where it tells who is responsible for the sidewalk and when it'll be put in. A note on for the HOA of who's responsible for installing those sidewalks, and then a note on the plat for that. So anyway, I wanted to thank because it comes up a few times tonight, and including this item here. This request is to approve a final plat to subdivide a single parcel, 14.4 acre parcel into 14 individual parcels for single-family residential development. The preliminary plat was approved on November of 2019. All public improvements required within the preliminary plat have been installed. The applicant provided a sidewalk plan and added a note on the plat and covenants stating that the sidewalks will be installed with each lot prior to the issuances of a CO. The applicant has also provided the staff a copy of the covenants that will govern the development of the addition. The city attorney has reviewed the HOA covenants per the subdivision regulations. Her checklist is included with the agenda if you'd like to review that. Action is at the discretion of the council. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Does anyone have any questions, Mr. Harless?
I want to comment and thank Billy and his staff and developer, because this has been going on for a while. Rick, this was going on even before you were elected or appointed, and I know that they've spent a lot of time getting this to the point where it is, because there was questions about drainage, sidewalks, and everything.
Yes, sir.
And Jeff Moore had me get involved in it early on, so I appreciate you guys staying with us. This is a needed area. I think it'll be a good development, and I do appreciate you guys working with the property owner, developer, and getting it to the point that it's at.
Well, thank you, sir.
Although this is not a public hearing, we do have one person that has signed up to speak on this. Mr. Bradley, would you come and address the council? Please state your name and address for the record, please.
Good evening, Mayor, Chamber. My name is Jeff Bradley. I live at 12420 Hastings Road. I'm here on behalf of my mother-in-law's estate, Miss Letha Slint. She lives at 10416 Southeast 10th Street, so just to the east of this property. Her property is adjacent to this. And what I'm concerned with is the drainage that is on Southeast 10th Street. On the south side of the road, there's a drainage that is on her property. And when it gets to the first property is 1002, they have blocked that off. They've added about 3 foot of dirt to that drainage. And so before this property was put in, there was a drainage that went all the way to the property that's listed as 1001 here. There's a catch basin there. Now they have effectively cut that whole drainage off. And so the water just piles up and has to make its way around. It doesn't have a mechanism to get to the catch basin. So I'm very concerned with the stormwater runoff here.
Okay, Mr. Bradley, thank you for being here. Mr. Harless, would your Mr. Bundy, like to address some of these issues?
I'll try to address it in general. All the stuff that's required with the plating has been taken care of and inspected in accordance with the regulations as for the proposed plans. We did talk about this briefly today, earlier today, about the off-site drainage and how it was working, because there were some drainage issues that were there beforehand. And when Brandon talked with Patrick Menifee, he said that they were working on a plan to address some of those issues at a later date. And that's, to the extent I know about it, they're working on it for a later date. So, Patrick, if you want to provide some more details on that.
What would the later date be?
Sir, I believe you said your land was to the east, so uphill?
Just uphill.
Okay, so this is the first we've heard of this particular issue, and I believe it's kind of a dirt-related issue. They dammed it with some dirt.
Completely dammed it up, about yay high.
I think I would like to look at this with Mr. Ergenbright after, but I don't think that's going to be an issue with the final plat. I think this is something that can be readily fixed because it's dirt and a grading issue.
How do we make a motion to make sure that this gets readily fixed, if it is an issue? I mean, if we approve this and we don't say anything about it, there's no readily fixing if Mr. Ergenbright doesn't want to. And look, I know Kevin, I think that he would do exactly what he says he's going to do, but at the same time, this gentleman probably doesn't, and we need to protect.
Well, that is true. I'm putting words in Mr. Ergenbright's mouth, so maybe he would want to speak to it. But in the past, he's been everything of a good neighbor. So,
So the question comes to me is, one, are you aware that berm has created any kind of a drainage issue? I'm sorry, sir, I did not catch your last name. Sir?
Oh, you want Mr. Bradley?
Yeah, I'm sorry. What was your name, Mr. Bradley?
Jeff Bradley.
Okay, sir. I'm just asking Mr. Ergenbright, were you aware before tonight that he's having an issue with any kind of drainage?
No, sir. But I do know what he's talking about.
Okay.
I'd be more than happy to look at that with you, for the fact that it should drain right into the street. If it's backing up, hey, we're gonna make it right.
So how do we?
So, now,
I will tell you, if I was sitting in Mr. Bradley's shoes, I wouldn't trust somebody I didn't know who told me I was going to make it right. I know you, and I know that you would for
count
me.
on the city to make sure that Mr. Ergenbright.
Well, but this, yeah, I know, but we don't need to be out there. Mind, can we put something in a motion if we pass this, that this is I want to pass this, I want to make this work, but I also at the same time don't want to leave Mr. Bradley's there. I knew Mr. Bradley's mom. I don't want to leave him with an issue with his mom's property.
We all feel comfortable that it'll take place, but what we can do is issue foundation-only permits until it is fixed. And then if at that point it's not fixed, then I guess we'll be back up here trying to make sure it happens. But we'll make every effort to make sure that it's resolved.
Mr. Bradley, are you good with that?
I'm still confused of how we're going to ensure that, and how I'm going to be involved with this, and what's the feedback to me.
So with the passage of this, the final plat, this enables them to get building permits, which is key in their development in order to start making money off the development. We can issue foundation-only permits until they get that fixed, and if they don't get it fixed, we won't issue anything above a foundation.
Because how I see it, it directly affects two of their, properties that are on, that he's proposed here. The 1002 and 1001 is going to be affected. They did some other work to make sure that other waters got to that catch basin, but this water that comes down about 300 feet is now dammed up.
Yeah.
That's a lot of water.
That water also runs right into the street after a certain point.
Well, now it does.
I mean, we had 3 engineering firms look at this.
Now it does. It went right to that catch basin that was in 1001 is where it was going.
Yeah, and so that is an option, is to do foundation-only permits.
I'm good with that. Again, I'm just one of 7, but I just want to make sure that it's an issue that gets addressed. And I'm sure Mr. Ergenbright will make it right. But if I would sit in Mr. Bradley's shoes, I don't know Mr. Ergenbright if I'm Mr. Bradley and just wouldn't trust somebody who said, trust me, I'll do the right thing.
Well, I can speak to his concern about the drainage because the reason that myself, Mr. Bundy, Mr. Erkenbright were out on his property, it's been probably a year and a half ago when this process first started, is because of the drainage issues. And that's why we met out there, is because they were trying to get ahead of it. Is that not, Brandon?
No, that's mainly on the back end. That's a whole other problem, but I'm really wanting on the south.
Okay, but the point I'm trying to make is that the city was working with him, he was working with us to get it fixed back then before the process even started. So I have no doubt that that this cooperation won't continue. Brandon, is that an accurate assessment of our meetings out there?
Yes, and all this, the design development, we reviewed it continually to try to prevent any other drainage issues to the existing conditions. And we didn't know anything to the east until tonight, which is upstream. Usually drainage problems are downstream of development. Upstream are a little bit easier to handle if it's dirt is in the way of proper drainage.
Can you go out there and look at that tomorrow?
Of course, I'll be out there tomorrow morning.
We need to get it resolved.
Yes.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Bradley, for being here. Mr. Gobranson, are you here for this item or another item? Oh, pardon me. Are you here on the other item? Okay. All right, thank you. Mr. Ergenbright.
Mr. Mayor, if I might just mention, we spent 2.5 years working on this project. We've addressed all the concerns that 3 engineers have brought up. Johnson Associates, my engineer, and also Brandon. And we spent thousands of dollars more than I feel like we should have to make this right. But we're a good neighbor. We're going to take care of it. I know what he's talking about. That ditch line, it may build up a certain point, and it runs right in the street. It never backs up that much. So with that being said, I ask for approval of the final plat, please.
Thank you, Mr. Ergenbright.
Thank you.
Any other questions or concerns? Chair would entertain a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Motion carries. And again, Mr. Bradley, thank you for being here and sharing your concerns. And let me put you a side note. If that did get resolved, call me.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Discussion item number 3, Mr. Lyon.
PC 2066, public hearing with discussion and consideration of an ordinance to redistrict from R6 single-family detached residential to C1 restricted commercial, and a resolution to amend the comprehensive plan from LDR low-density residential to OR office retail for the property described as a part of the southeast quarter of Section 6, Township 11, North Range 1 West, and a portion of the parcel addressed at 10601 Southeast 15th Street. Mr. Harlan.
Thank you,
Wait,
Mr. Ryan.
I have a point of personal privilege. Can we take a 5-minute recess, please?
Yes, ma'am. We stand recessed for 5 minutes.
Thank you.
No, it's not.
I now call this meeting back to order. And I think we've already read the discussion item. So this is a public hearing discussion on this particular item. The floor is yours, Mr. Harless.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, this is a .81 acre tract on the northwest corner of 15th and Lynn Fry. This request is to rezone a property from R6, single-family detached residential, to C1, restricted commercial. The northern portion of this lot is not included in the application. The portion of the lot will remain R6, single-family detached residential at this time, and the owner and applicant may apply to rezone and or subdivide the portion at a later date. No variances are being requested. All future construction would be required to meet the minimum requirements of the zoning ordinance, including parking, landscaping, screening, exterior materials, coverage, setbacks, minimum lot size, etc. Action is at the discretion of the council. We did have a official protest on this, so it will require a supermajority to pass. Be glad to answer any questions on that.
I believe the applicant and his attorney is present, so Mr. Box, you want to address the council?
Sure. David Box, 522 Colcord Drive. As you indicated, Mr. Joel Bryant, the applicant, is here, as well as Mark Grubbs, who's the civil engineer for the project. There was a question posed, so Mr. Harless did go through it, but I wanted to show you this exhibit just to kind of clarify. The application area is limited to the frontage along 15th, so it's 0.81 acres. The balance is zoned R6. We're not touching that. We're not affecting that whatsoever. It's still zoned single family, will remain single family. Our focus is only on the frontage there. What we intend to build is similar to what Mr. Bryant has built in another location in Midwest City. So it's really what we believe to be a very attractive building. The site would allow for 2 buildings similar to this, a total of 6,000 square feet, so 2 separate buildings. That would be approximately 3,000 square feet each. I do want to focus on why we selected C1. C1 under your code is called restricted commercial, and so if you read your code as to what that means, I think it's important as it relates to the protest. So what it says is the district is intended to provide a location for a limited number of commercial goods and personal services which serve the day-to-day needs of the residents surrounding neighborhoods. Because these shops and offices are lower intensity, they may be designed to be located along arterial streets, which is what we have here, and in close proximity to housing areas. The next part I think is the most important part as it relates to the protest. This district is limited to the types of uses that will not cause an adverse impact, i.e. noise, lighting, traffic, upon the surrounding areas. Outdoor storage and display is not permitted. So when you look at the C1 district, I would submit that this is exactly the type of scenario in which it is envisioned. It is limited. It specifically only allows uses that will not create an adverse impact. Southeast 15th Street being 4 lanes. I believe this would be a benefit to the city to generate commercial development, potential sales tax in a limited nature, and something that I think is what a city would want along an arterial when money is spent to widen it to 4 lanes. So it is coming to you with a recommendation for approval by the Planning Commission, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
So is it your client's intent, council, to have something not only that stylistically is similar to the one off of 15th and Post that you showed us earlier, but also that the purpose of the building is similar, as in overall small office practice
Yes, ma'am.
type businesses?
Yeah.
I personally frequent that business location, and I would just say, I noted the protest that was raised, but in terms of that particular business, I've never been there on an occasion when there was more than 3 cars in the parking lot. So it's overall not a high traffic type location. And that's your client's intent with this proposed location as well. Is that correct?
Absolutely. And if you go through the list of uses that would be permitted under C1, they are all uses that don't generate significant traffic.
I just wanted to make sure I was understanding not just the stylistic point, but the purpose also.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
is the intention of the property that's directly to the north of that, are they gonna continue to do residential in that area?
Yes.
As far as entrance driveway, if this was to be approved, how's that going to affect Windsong? I mean,
What was this, how would it affect what?
how is that going to be in proximity to the entrance and exit the street there for Windsong? So Windsong is directly across, I think, from.
We are, yeah, so we are offset from that. We do have the single access point on the 15th, and we are offset from that street.
Has there been any traffic study out there as to the number of vehicles that travel out there every day?
Yeah, we have traffic studies. I don't know what they are. Brandon, do you know what they are off the top of your head?
Council, we do annual counts throughout the city, and I can pull those counts up. That area, 2020 has seen a decrease in traffic, but I can get you those count data. It's basically just people that are traveling to and from on 15th Street. There's no turning movements or anything like that. And as far as traffic generation, we haven't required a traffic generation study for office small in this nature.
Billy, what was the main reason on the protest?
The main reason of the protest was traffic, and then also not having the ability to get it in and out of the Windsong neighborhood, or both neighborhoods to the north and the south, is the main concern on that. And as I explained to several people at the Planning Commission and to several people over the years at Windsong, that we do have a process for a traffic signal. To get a traffic signal, they do a petition similar to the petition that was done in opposition to this item. They would submit that to Patrick Menifee, the Public Works engineer, and that would be taken to Traffic and Safety with a recommendation from staff to evaluate the need for a traffic signal. At that point, Traffic and Safety would make a recommendation to the City Council, and y'all would act on it, that whether it was needed or not needed. And at that point, funding would be the issue if it was approved. And if you wanted one immediately, we'd have to find some in generous government, or usually we go to the ACOG for safety money to get the federal government to pay for that, and that's usually a couple-year process.
And that permit, or that petition hasn't been submitted yet, correct?
It has not.
And since that area right out there on 15th Street is where they did a lot of expanding the street and did it.
Yes, sir.
It's now a 4-lane high, and I heard somebody in the back make a comment that they speed through there. And I realize that there are studies that say that traffic lights don't slow the traffic down, but in my opinion, they do make people slow down because they have to stop. So it would be a good place if the issue is traffic out there, and it's going to be minimum, from what Ms. Eads says and from what Mr. Bach said, it's not going to be like a grocery store where there's a lot of cars. It would be advantageous for the residents out there to go ahead and do that process and get the traffic signal permit petition requested and get it started, because that may be a good place now you've got a business there, you've got more traffic, the residents out there could probably maybe use a traffic light, but the way to do it is to do the petition and start that process. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. If that's what they want to do, if they feel that's the need, that's the process to get it done.
Mr. Mayor, point of clarification. It was not our understanding that the protest had reached the level that the statute will require supermajority. It's our understanding that the individual to the west has not signed that, which is our calculation. We believe that person would have to trip the 50% requiring supermajority. This is the first we're hearing of this.
Yeah, Kelly, you reviewed that, and it was an official protest. They had some last-moment protests come in, so before the deadline.
I'm sorry, what's the point of order?
She said there were 15 protests received on it, and that meets the.
You're going to have to speak up, Mr. Harless.
He says there's one less signature than is needed to make the supermajority vote in the session.
That's
No.
what I believe.
That's not what Billy
That was an earlier. That was the first run at the petition, and then when Kelly notified the petitioner that they were short, they went back and got additional signatures, and Kelly went through them and verified that it was a legal protest.
Do you have I'm not doubting, I just, like I said, this is the first we've heard of this. Is it all, or the legal protesters, all the ones within 300 feet that tripped the 50%?
Yes.
So the one that Jill sent out to us, that 20 names, one of them. Okay. Well, Mr. Fox, I know being in Ward 6 and this being my ward, I can tell you the number of emails and phone calls that I received obviously was negative in this aspect. People are concerned about the traffic issues out there. I'm sure that, or at least I believe there's probably people that have signed up to speak.
We've got one.
Okay. But they were concerned about traffic issues, I think safety with it being a business. I think there might have also been concerns about what type of businesses will be going in there.
Sure.
We're specifically talking about tonight, but we will in the future if this is approved. So I think that's the citizens' concern there.
Understood. We talked a little bit about that at Planning Commission, obviously, walked through some of the uses that would and would not be allowed. Obviously, the district that we've chosen is significantly restricted in terms of the types of uses. They are focused on uses that do not generate a lot of traffic. To the Councilwoman's point, a similar building, identical building to what Mr. Bryan's proposing to build here, they just don't generate traffic. They're not general retail. Those are in different categories. So these types of uses, I think, end up being really good neighbors, especially along a 4-lane arterial like this, and are developed in a manner to be next to neighborhoods so that they provide those day-to-day services that neighbors need, and not destination type retail that you might have in a large shopping center where we do anticipate traffic and we accommodate that.
So there's no concern, you're not intending to do any other business development in that area, is that correct?
Yes, sir, that is correct.
Okay. Can you tell us approximately how many parking spaces are available to each one of those buildings if it was approved?
So what we show here, let's see, I'm going to say around 45. Of course, the use itself will dictate that. We don't seek any variances, so we will meet whatever your parking code would require as it relates to the specific use that would go in. Yes, sir.
This is a public hearing and discussion. Mrs. Gulbranson, would you want to address the council? And please state your name and address for us, please.
Yes. My name is Jerry Gulbranson. I am board president for Windsong HOA. I live at 10525 Songbird Lane. I'm out of the area specifically that was notified regarding this.
Understood.
However, I got numerous complaints. So I am the one that presented to you the legal protest last week. When I found out that I could not put my name on there as representing the HOA, I had to get some additional names, which I did. You know, you're talking about traffic flow. It's not just traffic flow. It's the fact that Midwest City has so much vacant property, and you're going to put a new build directly almost in the middle of nothing but residential homes. It's not the fact that it looks great. It's not that. It's the fact that here it is right in the middle of residential property. How's that going to affect our property values? That's what we're concerned about. And also regarding the traffic light. Years ago, I personally was in on that to try to get one for Winsong, and it was denied. So, you know, how can I say that it's not going to be denied again? We have one way in and one way out. However, we do have a second entrance that's off of Quail Run that goes out to Westminster, but it was never developed. So we can't do anything to get out except to go that way. And traffic now has increased because down to the east of us is a huge apartment complex that was put in. So all that traffic now is coming down to the west. All that traffic is going back to the east to go back to that area. There's a lot of homes and a lot of apartment complexes out there. So that's why we respectfully ask that you not approve this commercial property. And
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for showing up.
thank you for your time.
Appreciate it. Is there any other further questions of the applicant or the chair to entertain a motion?
Motion to pass. Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye. I'm sorry. Ms. City Clerk, we need to do a roll call vote.
Eads. Byrne.
Yes.
Bowen. Reed.
Yes.
Allen.
Which abstain or yes or no?
Favors. Mayor.
Yes. So, under the ordinance, it passes. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here and expressing your views and holding your government accountable.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
in addition to this, since we're on, I know it's maybe out of order. If I am, call me. Before y'all leave, hold on just one second. Can we make sure that, based off of what this lady just said, I know she said she put in for a traffic light years ago, but that was before the apartment complex, and that was before.
Ms. Gilbranson, are you still here?
They asked for a traffic light before the apartment complex, which put a lot of people out there, before they put in the road improvements. And I know it's incumbent, it normally falls on the citizens to do this, but I think it would be, I think maybe on this time we make an exception where somebody from city reaches out to these people and starts the process on the.
I'm fixing to do that right now.
Yeah, it's Patrick here. I can't see him. He was here. Patrick, stand up. Would you catch her on the way out the door and visit
Ms.
with her, please?
Gilbranson, obviously, from the time that you initially applied for the traffic light to now, conditions have changed.
So have a lot of accidents.
So what I would like for you to do, and if you need my assistance, I will help you, get with Mr. Menifee back there in the back, and he's going to guide you through the process again. But all of the HOA needs to be involved and sign that petition, be very succinct in your request for the council and the Traffic Safety Commission, and I really don't think you're going to have an issue with it.
Okay.
Okay?
I'll hold
And
you
holler
to it.
at me if you need any help.
I'll hold you to it.
All right.
Thank you.
And while we're talking about it, one of the people back there made a comment that didn't come up and say, but he's talking about the speeding out there. So could we get some special emphasis out there?
We'll make that request in the morning. Yes, Miss Eads, I'm sorry. No sweat. Consider that request in the mailbox. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we move to discussion item number 4. Mr. Lyon.
PC 2067, public hearing, discussion, and consideration of an ordinance to redistrict from R6 single-family detached residential with a special use permit for a church to C3 community commercial, and a resolution to amend the comprehensive plan from PSP public, semi-public to commercial for the property described as part of Northwest Quarter, Section 1, Township 11, North, Range 2 West, 208 South Douglas Boulevard.
Floor is yours, Mr. Harless.
Thank you all. Yes, this is a 3-acre development on the southeast corner of Reno and Douglas, just south of the Little Caesars Pizza there. This is a request to rezone the property from R6, single-family detached residential, to C3, community commercial. A church building and accessory building currently exist on the lot. If this request is approved, The applicant plans to demolish the former church building, build one or multiple new commercial buildings, and leave the existing metal building in the rear portion of the lot. No variances are being requested. All future construction would be required to meet the minimum requirements of the zoning ordinance, including a parking, landscaping, screening, exterior materials, covered setbacks, minimum lot size, etc. Planning Commission recommended approval, and of course, action is at the discretion of the council. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Is that the old Methodist church?
I'm sorry,
Yes. Yes.
I didn't hear you.
And I will tell you that that's my ward, and I've had several people over the last couple of years contact me, wanting to encourage the city to get something done on that corner, get it developed, I mean, it's one of the main intersections in Midwest City, and there's a vacant building, and if you're passing through, it's not a good look for the city, so I welcome this. And I had
What do they plan to do there? Is the applicant here?
He's right behind Billy. Right behind Billy.
Could you tell us what you're going to do?
Mr. Mayor, council members, Rod Baker, 2800 Northwest 36th Street in Oklahoma City. We plan to demolish the sanctuary, the main church building, retain and improve the building, the 6,000-foot building that's at the rear of the property, and to develop for small restaurant, retail type uses on the front. We submitted a preliminary site plan for that to have a small retail center and some small restaurant uses. We were involved in the development of the CVS and the Little Caesars on the corner years ago. We built the Little Caesars building at that time. So we've had our eye on this property for some time, and it finally came to the point where it made sense to try and acquire the property. We've done some other work in Oklahoma City, in Midwest City, I'm sorry. We redeveloped the Walmart across the street into the self-storage years ago, since been sold. And we did the Little Caesars that's on 17th and Air Depot.
How'd you get the Methodists to turn loose of that building?
Well, I think they finally got weary.
We tried.
It's been a while, yeah.
All right, does anyone have any questions of the applicant or any questions about this process? With hearing none, the chair to entertain a motion.
motion to approve.
Second.
Public hearing first.
It is a public hearing, I'm sorry. Everything's a public hearing tonight. There is a public hearing. Is there anyone that has any opposition or wishes to address this particular issue on the agenda? Hearing or seeing none, the chair to entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Good luck, sir.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Now move to discussion item number 1. Or number 5,
five.
I'm sorry. I don't want to retread
I was
that.
about to say, we got to start.
People are going, he's crazy.
Somebody take the gavel away from him.
You're out of order.
PC 2068, public hearing with discussion and consideration of an ordinance redistrict from planned unit development to amended planned unit development for the property described as Lot 1 of the Red Oak development addressed at 2113 South Douglas Boulevard.
Thank you, Mr.
Harless.
This is a request to amend the zoning from PUD, planned unit development, to amended PUD. Amended PUD development, the area of request is a single lot, currently zoned PUD and governed by C3, Community Commercial District. Staff held a meeting with the applicant in October to discuss amending the existing PUD to govern Lot 1, addressed as 2113 South Douglas, by the C4 General Commercial District to allow the use of commercial marijuana grow. With this application, all of the existing C3 uses currently allowed by the PUD will remain for Lot 1, and the only C4 use allowed will be that of commercial marijuana grow. The existing use of an office will continue in the building on the eastern side of Lot 1. The applicant expressed interest in using the existing building in the rear portion of the lot as an indoor marijuana grow facility. The structure has been used previously as an indoor horticultural growing as part of the landscape business. Proper building permits to convert the existing structure into marijuana grow facility would be required. If this application is approved, the applicant would be required to file for a marijuana grow license with the state. Planning Commission recommended approval, and action is at the discretion of the City Council. Glad to answer any questions.
Any questions?
Public discussion.
Mr. Rice, are you representing the applicant? I think you know the procedure, so I'm not going to guide you through it.
I am Richard Rice, 1401 South Douglas Boulevard, Midwest City, 73130. And this property is Mr. Strayhorn's landscaping business. He's had a greenhouse there. He's had outdoor commercial, agricultural and horticultural business there for years. On the street frontage right there on Douglas Boulevard is a small house, a very nice house that is his landscaping business, and behind that is a warehouse-style building that he has used for decades to grow plants on the inside as part of the landscaping business. And when he tasked me with the job of getting a state grow license for in there, that's when we discovered that he can grow every plant on the inside there except marijuana because he was zone C3 and he needs to be C4, and that's what the application is for. Not going to be building anything, no construction. There's going to be some modifications to the HVAC system, but that's very minor and that's required by state law. Other than that, we believe everything is in compliance. Oh, he will not be producing or doing any of the production or any retail at that location. There's not going to be any signage related to it as well. He's just growing on the inside.
Mr.
Thank you,
Rice,
Mr.
I have
Rice.
a question.
Any questions?
The, excuse me, sorry, the house that is immediately to the north there, am I correct? And I'm trying to remember this from memory from driving down Douglas, basically. That's going to remain a house essentially, but it's not a residence, if I'm.
No,
it's
in fact, there's a really nice marquee sign on it that says, that has the name of the landscaping business.
Thank you. That's what I was thinking, but I couldn't quite.
Inside of that structure are the offices for the landscaping business.
And those will remain?
Those will remain
office
exactly
building
as is.
Or offices?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions or discussion? This is a public hearing. Does anyone in the audience have any issues with this particular item on the agenda? Hearing or seeing none, the chair to entertain a motion.
Motion to
Move to
approve.
approve.
Whoa.
Second.
I think there was 14 motions, and there were only
I
6
think
of us that could do it.
potential customers.
I'll take a second on that.
I heard Rick make a motion, but you can't make a motion, Rick.
I've occupied way too many seats up there. Sorry, just have it.
I believe I have a motion and a second. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention, motion carries. Rick, nice seeing you and thanks for being here.
Rick,
Thank
you
you all.
literally have occupied more seats up here than anybody else.
I've been in that seat, I've been in that seat.
Yep.
Over there used to be city attorney, so I've been in that seat and I have sat up there a few times, so long time.
God bless you.
Thank you all. She's doing great, thank you for that.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, item number 6, there's no action needed on this particular item. No improper notice was given. This will be coming back at a later date. Item 7.
PC 2070, discussion consideration of approval of the proposed preliminary plat of Primrose Hill described as a part of Southwest Quarter, Section 31, Township 12 North, Range 1 West, located at 316 North Post Road. Mr. Harless.
This is a 9.23 acre preliminary plat north on Post Road. North of Reno on Post Road, North Post Road. Sorry. This item is a request to subdivide a single parcel into 30 individual parcels for single-family development. Access to the subdivision will be via the new street Primrose Lane off of North Post Road. The applicant is proposing water and sewer line extensions to serve all the lots. The area of request is currently zoned R6, single-family detached residential. The Parkland Review Committee recommended approval of a fee to be paid in lieu of the parkland dedication. Tree preservation will be required with this subdivision. The applicant has requested a waiver to the cul-de-sac length, as subdivision regulations state that the cul-de-sac shall not exceed 500 feet. The proposed cul-de-sac is 999 feet in length. The applicant has also requested a partial waiver regarding the tree preservation. Both waivers are included with this agenda packet. The preliminary stormwater management and drainage plan is available upon request. Prior to the Planning Commission meeting, there were discussions between staff and the applicant regarding the timing and responsibility of the installation of sidewalks. The Planning Commission recommended approval of the item with the alternative to requiring the developer to install the sidewalks prior to the final plating or providing a surety bond. The alternative being that the developer may submit a sidewalk plan and a clear statement on the plat and the covenants, the sidewalk plan covenants, and a sidewalk plan clarifying who is responsible for sidewalk construction. The Planning Commission also recommended approval of the requested waivers. Action is at the discretion of the City Council. It is requested that the City Council address the waivers to the length of the cul-de-sac and tree canopy management plan when a motion is made on this item. Be glad to answer any questions.
To be clear, this is not a rezoning request. It's already zoned for the intended use, correct?
Yes, sir. There was a petition on this similar to the zoning, but since this is a plat, it is not a valid petition, although their voice is heard.
Understand. Although this is not a public hearing or discussion, we do have one gentleman who has signed up to speak to council on this particular issue. Mr. Ergenbright, could you come before council and address your issues?
Yes, sir.
And state your name and address for the record.
My name is James Ergenbright. I live at 10012 Oak Park Drive. I'm a retired safety engineer, and some of the things I've seen with this in the short time that I've even known about it have me concerned. So what I'd like to bring up a little bit, I believe this is named Primrose Hill. On Oak Park, we have large lots, almost 3/4 to an acre in those lots. There's approximately 20 homes on Oak Park before it takes a jog and then goes on back. Then at the one point on the far east end of Oak Park there, you have a 9-acre lot. And that 9 acres is at the backside of this area. Well, what we've really have concerns about, and some of our neighbors, as we started finding out about this, we started talking about it. I believe there's going to be 30 homes in this area, and that's basically about a 900 to 1,000-foot lot area, that deep. So now we're changing the way that the homes in this square mile are set up. Down on 4th Street, the lots are 3/4 to an acre in size. Our whole neighborhood, they're at least 3/4 to an acre. And so that has been an established home area in this whole mile. I know now down on Westminster and 10th, they've changed theirs some, but right here on Post and Reno, a 2-lane road, now we're going to add 30 homes on an average, either 30, 60, 100 cars are going to go into that single area there. So some of the things that I was looking at on the city ordinance, 38-3-1, 38-3-2, or .2. I hope I'm not speaking too loud here.
No, you're fine.
Okay, thank you. Protection of public and private interest. The development and subdivision of land as they affect a city's quality of life are activities for the regulation is a valid function of the city government. The regulation contained within the subdivision ordinances are intended to protect the interest of the public and of the private parties by granting certain rights and privileges. So the establishment of the street and home and lot sizes are in that area. So I believe, and many of our neighbors are the same way, if we put 30 homes into this new subdivision, we're overcrowding that small area. And it being a cul-de-sac, you've got one way in, one way out. And so as we start having traffic coming in and out of that area, we've noticed a huge increase of traffic in our street because people cut through going down to Jackson so they don't have to go through the lights. And so we get cars in there, and now we've had a large increase of children moving into the area. And so that's another safety concern when some of these cars and trucks are driving down through there on an average of 20 to 30 to 40 miles an hour. And then we have Amazon in there every single day. We have UPS and the other trucks delivering. So we have a large concern there. We start having that same increase into the Primrose Hill. And then the next part, 38-3.2, fair and rational procedures. The requirements in the subdivision ordinance are also intended to establish a fair and rational procedure for developing and subdividing land, such that the land will be developed in accordance with existing physical, social, economic, and environmental conditions. So again, overloading that small area with 30 homes in comparison to the 20 homes in our area, and then the same as 4th Street, becomes an issue. So that's why we request either reduce the amount of homes approved there or make some changes in that area. So from there, we're real concerned about water runoff. That whole area has been a wooded area, a single resident home back in there. The water soaks into the ground. And a couple years ago when we had the massive rains that came through, that area didn't flood. But I know that my home, from the neighbor building a metal building in the backyard, flooded my shop, ruined some of my equipment in there because the water ran through, because of changing that landscape in their backyard. So with that in mind, for us, especially on the south side of the cul-de-sac there, that new change there and removing all the trees and all the landscape that absorbs that water, we're going to have a lot of water runoff. Now, most homes will end up with gutter systems, and you're going to have a gutter system in the roadways, and that's going to run down into the retainment pond down there. But the problem with that is, with all those gutter systems, now we've taken and putting buildings on that land that absorbed it. So that water's got to go somewhere. And a lot of it very well could go into the backyards of all the folks on the south side of that area. And then one of the biggest things right now, again, would go back to the safety on the roadways. With a 2-lane highway, the increased traffic. Now, it seems, 30 to 100 cars don't seem like a lot, but last year we had a man that ended up in a shrubbery on the side of Post Road, and that we know of, he died. One of the crepe myrtles, and he landed right in the middle of it. And we heard that he had died through that. We don't know. The roadway comes from a 4-lane at the stoplight to a 2-lane, and when you get traffic going up through there, almost every day we have fire trucks and ambulances going up and down that road. So now if we add increased traffic in and out of that area, we've just added more to it. And so those are many of our concerns. Our final thing I would say is comparable area. 20 homes in that area would be a lot better for the reason that it's more comparable to the surrounding environments and areas, going back to the regulations 3-1, 3-2. So thank you again for hearing me. I didn't know if you had any questions of me, but I sure appreciate you allowing us to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Ergenbright, for being here.
Okay.
We appreciate it.
I don't know how many of our neighbors are here, but I know we had some of them that were going to come. Oh, yes, ma'am.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I apologize, but I do have questions off of what you asked, but I'd like to direct them to Mr. Harless.
Oh, okay.
So I apologize. I didn't mean to interrupt.
Would you allow me one other comment, please?
Sure.
We found out about this through our neighbors. We are just about 350 to 400 feet from this. Does it directly impact me on a daily basis? I don't know yet. But I speculate, and from my training for the last 20-some years as a safety engineer, I look at things like that and I think of it. But I would ask the council to reconsider the 300 feet zone to alert someone that something's getting ready to happen, because it does, in the way that Midwest City is growing, 300 feet's not enough. That just barely touches the people that are impacted by the things that are changing so radically in our city. So I would ask that you would consider increasing that to a better range, 600,000,
Sir,
whatever. Yes.
I just asked the city attorney, and she said it's set by the state. We cannot make our ordinances any stricter than what the state has.
Wow. Well, I'm sure sorry to hear that, because it doesn't give the people and the citizens of the cities.
We do have state legislatures that we can reach out and touch, and if we find that needs to be changed, we can certainly start that process.
I'll see if I can make contact with mine too. Thank you.
So,
no, very much. I appreciate that.
Senator Brenda Stanley is your representative for the Senate.
Thank you.
So, thank you, Mr. Ergenbright. We appreciate it. Mr. Box, you're signed up to talk about this, and the floor is yours.
Could I ask a couple of follow-up questions just before Mr. Box takes the floor over to Billy and follow up to what the gentleman just said?
Yeah, Mr. Box is getting paid by the hour, so he probably assumes that you asked Billy a bunch of questions.
Always happy to accommodate another counselor. Okay, so a couple of questions and follow-up, Mr. Harless. I'm sorry, Mr. Engelbright, did I pronounce that?
Ergenbright.
One more time. Ergenbright, I'm so sorry. The mask is now affecting my hearing too. This particular area of request, the gentleman indicated it goes from 4-lane close to the intersection to a 2-lane there on Post. Is that accurate?
Yes, and we're looking at expanding that in the next couple of years.
That ding, 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 that's where I'm headed. Do we know kind of what the rollout is on that, or is it just in sort of the hierarchy of needs chart right now?
It'll be a couple of 2 or 3 years at least.
But we're looking to expand it to 4,
Yes.
ideally, moving to the north. Would that be fair?
I believe it's two lanes and a turn lane. You can just mark it out.
As far as widening projects, it's really to council's discretion. If you want to pursue a project such as that, then we will have to go through some funding and then also apply for federal funding. So it's not just an internal, but that's quite a project just to go from 2 to 4 lanes.
Like,
We can put it there.
and I apologize, I just have a couple more, I promise. Mr. Bundy, you may not want to leave because you may want to jump in on this too. I'm not meaning to put you, Mr. Harless, in the hot seat too bad here, but in that same vein, in terms of the traffic and the burden in that area, has that been examined for any type of traffic calming device, such as, I believe, Ms. Bowen, Councilwoman Bowen was in another area that I'm blanking on the name of, I'm sorry, we just
Cardinal.
Thank you. Has this particular area been considered for a similar traffic calming device?
It has been, and this came up at the planning commission, and the engineer and applicant pulled out a proposal that shows a traffic, it's not a circle, but it's a traffic calming in the middle of the road that the fire department has agreed to the dimensions and engineering has agreed to, and it's about midway through the cul-de-sac on this.
Okay, and similarly, just so I'm clear, and I apologize, like I'm trying to visualize this area too, the closest intersection points are at Reno there. I mean, there's no, when I'm looking at the geographical map, I'm not seeing that there's a crossroads where there could be a traffic signal installed like on a 4-way intersection. Is that correct? They look like they're staggered to me. Is my understanding correct?
You're talking about with this development? No, there's not one immediately across or next.
Everything is staggered near the area of request, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And one last one, and then I will stop, I promise. I just wanted to clarify. What the gentleman said earlier with regard to the water runoff issue, it would be similar to what we've heard before in terms of this project as it progresses, would be geared or gauged such that there would be no increased burden of water to surrounding areas. Is that correct, Mr. Harless?
That's the intent of the ordinance. We as staff are quite frankly, are concerned about the drainage in this area. It is heavily wooded, it's sheet flows, and when it is gathered on the site and put in, and I forget what there's a large portion of this that's gathered going to be put into the detention facility. And it's the, actually the release of that's where we're concerned, is because when you do that with an existing situation where you sheet flow everything across it versus taking it and putting it into a detention facility and doing the fire hose where it comes out as a single point release, that causes concern because wherever it's released is going to potentially erode. We would like to see that to ensure that this drainage is addressed, because we are concerned about it, that the applicant maybe refine their plans a little bit to maybe increase the overall detention area, detain more water, so that not just the minimum, but detain more water because they have the area to do it. I think another possibility is to put a weir system in it, which instead of just putting a single point out there, that a weir would is a graduated V that would let the water out at a more appropriate rate. And I think another thing that we would talk about would be to dissipate the water so that it doesn't just hit one point, that it actually has different things to dissipate the power of that as it comes out. But also move the back, because one of our issues is moving that release point to the property line, and then it dumps onto another property. Pull that back maybe 15 feet so that the requirement maintenance on that is on the HOA. There's enough room there to do that, and it's something that I think would help alleviate some of the concerns on drainage.
Billy, I can piggyback off of what she just said, because it's actually brought up twice in your report, once by you and once by Billy, I mean once by Brandon, where the statement is made because and we've all dealt with this, with private property downstream of this point. Further improvements will be required on the public right-of-way to further distribute and mitigate the water, which I read is that we're dealing with this right now over there at the Carl Albert baseball fields.
Yes, sir.
Where the weir deal is, apparently it's working, where it doesn't, sheet flow works to a point, but it's not the end all. So, and I'm not against this project. I just want to make sure, because it says in the report that it's going to put water on some other people's property.
That's correct.
So whatever we could do to mitigate that, and your idea that you just mentioned is drop it back 50 feet, make the detention pond on his side, or on the developer's side, for the HOA to be responsible for it. That may be the way to go. I'm not an engineer. I don't know. You just brought that up, but it concerns me. I'm not against the project. Lord knows we need this type of housing in our city. But we don't want to approve it, and then next year, the neighbors are getting flooded out. So now's the time to fix that, in my opinion.
That's
Yes, sir.
absolutely correct, because I actually spoke with Mr. Bryan concerning this matter. Because we have so much flooding there already, I back up to Post Road, and I get water runoff, just like we had the big storm the other night, and water was coming down, and it was to my level of my patio, which is pretty high. And all that water is coming that way. So if we cannot do something about that to alleviate that problem, we're gonna still have it coming across Post Road down into the neighborhoods. And so that's something that I would ask that the applicant look at and be able to fix, because that's a big problem we have in Ward 3 and other wards too. But
Yes.
I can tell you specifically Ward 3, we deal with a lot of it, as you guys know already.
Yeah, and we're looking at we've contracted with the Johnson and Associates to look at the drainage ordinance to try to make some corrections and improve it. And one of the things through this process that we found when we were looking at some past data is that we're just getting more intense rainstorms today than what we were last year or years ago. And so you're getting instead of, as Vaughn would say, a 5-inch rain over multiple hours, you're getting a 5-inch rain in an hour. And it's not, the systems aren't dealing with it very well, and we need to upgrade our ordinances, which we're working on.
Thank you, Billy. Mr. Box, the floor is yours.
Yes. I do want it, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. David Box, 522 Colcord Drive. So a handful of things. As you correctly identified at the outset of this, Mr. Mayor, this is not a zoning case. This is a plat. It is already zoned single family. I think it's worth noting that the single family designation would allow lots at approximately 6,000 square feet. Our average lot size is 10,000 square feet, so these are bigger lots than what traditional single family would allow. The homes are going to be somewhere between 2,000 square feet and 2,400 square feet. Mr. Bryant is anticipating these homes to be around $300,000 homes, so he's installing a nice product. As it relates to the two waivers, first on the street. So we do have a long cul-de-sac, and at Planning Commission, the question was raised about the safety. The safety of the cul-de-sac requirement is obviously a safety matter for the people that will eventually live here. So what we've done to break up that length is a traffic circle or chicane, whatever this would be defined as, to break that traffic up so that it's not a straight shot. Oftentimes these traffic circles provide a nice landscaped area, a nice amenity for a neighborhood, and we anticipate that here. The code specifically allows for waivers in instances like this where, based upon the ownership of the property, a hardship is created. When you look at the layout of this property, it is a long, narrow tract. There is no other place to connect or loop back in on itself because of the narrowness of the site. So we think we are within that criteria contemplated by the code for the waiver. As it relates to the waiver on the trees, I do want to state that we will have tree coverage that will exceed the requirements of your code. One of the reasons we need the waiver, and I'm going to have Mr. Grubbs get up here in a moment and speak to it, by removing some of those trees at the outset, we're going to be able to better grade the lots and to ensure with more certainty that the drainage issues that could exist out here will be controlled. Before he gets up, the ideas that were thrown around, Mr. Grubbs did a few quick calculations. We can agree to require 10% additional storage capacity in addition to what your ordinance would require to be detained. So we can increase what we have to detain by 10% above what your ordinance would require. And as it relates to the outlet, we can agree to pull that back 25 feet off of the property line, which again I think would be above what your ordinance would require. But I want to have Mr. Grubbs, if you'll allow, Mr. Mayor, to talk about why allowing us the waiver on the tree issue could potentially solve some of the drainage problems.
Absolutely.
Good evening, Mark Grubbs, Grubbs Consulting, 1800 South Sarah Road. I am the engineer on the project. So maintaining the tree coverage, it's going to keep the land at the same slope. This land slopes to the northeast. By removing some of the tree coverage, we can grade the lots back into the street, control the water to the detention pond, and make sure that we're not increasing runoff to the north, just immediately adjacent to there. So we have to have that. If you maintain tree coverage, you don't have the ability to grade the property properly to control drainage. That's the biggest deal there. So I don't know how much more detail you want me to go in on that.
No, that's quite all right.
I was not there. Are you going to clear all the trees in that lot and then replant?
What is not the intention to clear all the trees, just the trees we need to clear to control drainage. And we are replanting above and beyond.
The only reason I'm really asking, I had an old developer one time say if anybody says they need to clear all the trees off, the only reason they're doing it is cheaper to take the trees off than it is to build around them. So I was just making sure that wasn't what you guys were trying to do, was get an ability to strip the trees as a way to lower your cost while making it not look very palatable to everybody else in the neighborhood.
No, and we have presented a tree preservation plan that doesn't, we don't show clearing the entire property. But we are planting back more than required per the tree preservation.
But you're also planting juvenile trees that don't have the same look or feel as 30, 40, 50, 60-year-old trees.
I can't disagree with that.
And you all are, you are in agreement to increase the drainage retention and the setback on the outlet. Is that my understanding?
We have no issues with that. Yeah.
So,
25 feet back, right?
Yes.
from the city engineer's perspective, do you all, Brandon, I'm looking at you, I'm sorry, have a opinion as far as the 10% increase offer? I mean,
Well, anything above our ordinance is better than what we have. And when we look at the drainage ordinance, we're going to look at alternatives to detention ponds themselves. As far as 10%, I don't know what that equates to in exact numbers and what kind of events. Certainly a weir would also help because it manages the lower level storms. You know, we talk in year storms, like a 100-year storm would be a big flood, but that's based on 100 years worth of data. So,
but the
so
weir
it's
is not
not always
contemplated
accurate.
by the offer of the applicant, as I'm understanding it correctly.
Yes, it would be better, 10%. We are going to look at, you know, we'd like to have a weir, and then we'll look at, you know, energy dissipation, as Billy said.
I'm sorry, one more time, I'm still confused. So the weir is included or is not included in what the engineer for the applicant has just indicated?
We will agree to regulate all storm events above and beyond what your ordinance requires.
Thank you, sir. And thank you, Mr. Box. Is there any further questions? Sure, Mr. Eggenbright. But, can you make it quick? All right.
James Ergenbright here again. My question is related to their comments about removing the trees. So once they do, that's a large area of trees and it's pretty heavily wooded. Once those are all cleared out that they're going to take out, what are they going to do with them? Are they going to burn them, which is going to run all the wind, I mean the smoke into our neighborhood possibly, or whatever?
Ask them real quick.
Okay. So with all the trees that are going to be removed, what are you going to do with them? Are you going to haul those off so that we don't have to be exposed to all the smoke from burning them, or how do you take care of those?
So if they're burned, they'd be burned with a burn curtain incinerator, which would meet your fire marshal's requirements if they were burned.
Okay. Is that it? It would be our okay. It would be our fire marshal where that permit would be issued through. All right. Thank you, Mr. Ergenbright.
Thank you.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, council, any further questions on this particular issue? Chair to entertain a motion.
I'll second that.
I can't hear you, I'm sorry.
We need to take no action on it if we're going to do anything. If we table it, it has to come back directly to us like it is, and there's no room for anything to be moved. So if anything, we just need to take no action.
Take no action.
And what are the conditions? What do we need to see when it comes back?
Well, a very clear cut, the information that we have said that they were going to do today, with that information that we set forth, and also look at the recommendations that the constituent has asked for, along with lowering from 30 to 20 houses. I would like to see them review that as well.
May I?
Sure.
In terms of going from 30 to 20 houses, we're talking about, that's a zoning question, not a plating question. We are already significantly larger in these lot sizes compared to what the zoning would allow. So talking about reducing density is not a matter relevant to a plat discussion. That is a matter relevant to a zoning discussion. And that discussion was put to bed many years ago, presumably. We're already, I think, way under in terms of lot size or lot count compared to what it could be under its current zoning. It is a preliminary plat. We will certainly not be able to do anything until a final plat is done. We could perhaps take the time between now and the final plat to do that, but I believe that everything is formalized. The only things that we've agreed to do today are things that are in excess of what your ordinance would require, that Mr. Grubbs will submit to your engineering staff. I don't know that there's anything that needs to be formalized outside of that.
Here's what I think that we lose if we go and either take no action or table it. They don't have to come back the next time and offer more than what our codes allow, and they're offering it now.
Well, they're saying that they're gonna go above and beyond what our ordinance says.
And that's what they said today. But we take no action, that doesn't mean they come back and do the same thing. We run that risk if we take no action, and I'm gonna, if we take no action, they don't have to come back and say these same things. That's my concern. They have given some areas that most folks don't give. They don't usually want to go at higher than what our standards.
Well, and the project is a good project. Don't get me wrong, it's not just that I don't want the project to happen. It's just the way the project is right now, to me and to the constituents, it's not conducive. And they feel, and I feel, that the problem with the runoff of the water and things like that is not gonna happen.
Well,
And I think
go ahead.
I think the waivers that they're requesting helps
Yeah,
your
they're
concern.
requesting the waivers. That's the reason I asked about the trees. I like trees.
I do too.
You know, we're a tree city. We used to have a sign up there that said, you know, Midwest City's a tree city. I think Matt had that taken down. I'm just joking with you.
Had a long night, Reed.
What his engineer said, and I'm not a developer on this at all, but what he said, the reason you take trees down is twofold. One, it makes it easier. It's easier to go in and take the trees down than it is to build around them. But two, he's right, you can't move that dirt. And so instead of how it's flowing now, they're gonna direct everything, and they can't direct that with the trees there.
So the reason for the tree ordinance, if I may, the reason for the tree ordinance or the tree canopy preservation was to help eliminate the clear cut and just taking out and regrading the whole lot. That if we force the developer to take a look at the existing tree canopy and try to take that into account, that they would lessen the density of the houses and stuff in the proposed
That's why I
subdivision.
asked if they were doing it to the entire thing.
And I do want to remind
Or not.
council that last year we did approve on a project done on Douglas to vary the tree count to allow the developer to go in there and properly grade and insert the utilities. So we've approved that particular issue.
And we
before.
also, since this is a preliminary plat, still have a little bit of control. When they come back for their final plat, if they have not done what they say they're going to, we don't have to approve it. Is that correct, Billy?
That's correct.
Okay.
So,
We can negotiate.
my thing is that this was the very final. If these folks hadn't offered any kind of above and beyond, I wouldn't have the heartburn with putting this off.
Okay.
We stand to lose them going up to a little bit higher standards. And I don't think we stand to gain anything. If this was the final plat, I would be where you're at, let's put this off.
Okay.
But with the preliminary, with what they have said that they would do, and the time that we have between the preliminary and the final plat, we still have the final say. And if they haven't done what they said they're going to, they smoke the neighbors out because you burn the trees and you smoke the neighbors out and you make everybody mad. You don't have the tree canopy plan back right, and you don't have the water runoff done right, you're not getting the final plat.
But Councilman Reed, with all due respect, at the same time, you can talk about what the applicant is offering above ordinance, and I do appreciate that, and I appreciate their willingness to compromise, and at the same time, they're sitting before us with a need for us to approve the preliminary plat right now. And if we don't approve that, they don't move forward with this project as it is. So with all due respect, I think that we're not at a lack of bargaining position currently. And I think that the councilwoman's concerns with regard to the runoff of this are still an issue. And although they're offering to go, for example, 10% higher with regard to the detention, I mean, that's my question to Mr. Bundy. What's 10%? You know, is that enough? Because what we have done historically, in fairness, just give me 1 second. What we have done historically is found ourselves in situations that were approved, and yet they left us with a huge mess to clean up because there are huge drainage issues. They met every requirement, maybe, but they were still a problem. And I don't see how us taking a minute to give some further consideration to where we're at on this tonight is really a hardship, given what's at risk here and given the concerns that have been raised by the constituents.
So it's a hardship in a lot of ways to Mr. Bryant. Tons of ways, dollars-wise.
Sean, can I say something? Can I cut in? Billy, can you answer me a question? Is it an accurate statement that the current property owner that owns the property right now could cut down every tree on that entire tract of land right now, burn it, and we can't stop it?
They would, if you're talking about with just the property owner just going out and do it, they would have to go through and get a land disturbance permit, but they wouldn't, that was it.
Stop it.
Right, correct.
So we're
And also, I would like to point out that we've had, over the course of the last 5 years, several developers up here. And some did not have the best interest of the city of Midwest City at heart. Very few, I can only count one, that has actually, during council, done the calculations and offered concessions to address the issues that are concerns of not only your constituents, but everybody on the horseshoe. There's not a one of us that doesn't take drainage seriously, because we have had our eyes beat shut over the period of 5 years over this. But they are willing to make these concessions. The statement that Mr. Reed made is correct. We approved the preliminary plat, but he doesn't sell houses on that lot until we approve the final plat. And if these things that he's agreed to this evening haven't taken place, that's not happening. In the meantime, if we don't approve this, the clock's counting on the cost of what it would cost to finish this development. So what we have to do as a council is what's best for the city as a whole. These are quality homes, obviously. They're going to bring a different style of homes to our community, which every one of us has sit around and talked on the need for that. So I would suggest to the council that we, again, take a moment, we approve the preliminary, and hold their feet to the fire when they come back. And we're going to have to rely on Mr. Bundy and Mr. Harless to ensure that all those issues are taken care of. We cannot continue to blockade every developer that comes through here and hurt the development of Midwest City. Development is going to happen, and it's either going to be quality development or it's going to be crap that we don't want.
I'd like to say to SB that I am not discounting a single one of your concerns. And if this was a final plat, I would be 100% behind what you're saying.
I understand what you're saying.
And I would agree with him.
I would agree too. Another thing, I know Midwest City doesn't have a lot more land mass, and we need the new housing and the more building here in the Midwest City area. But I want them to think about this and take in consideration. I will be watching. I will vote tonight. I'll vote yes on it, but I will be watching.
Actually, I think all of us will be, guys.
I still have a point of order question, though. Earlier, SB made a motion to table this, and I seconded it, and we didn't go to a vote.
Well, I'll reverse that.
Okay.
I'll reverse that.
Thank you for that point of clarification.
Thank you.
I wasn't aware that
Yes,
that was
and I
actually a
did.
motion.
Yeah, it was.
Would you like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve,
Subject to?
subject to them continuing on what they said they're gonna do with the drainage and with the tree situation over in that area. And all the concessions that they listed.
Ms. Clerk, could you get those concessions? No. Okay, it's 10% on the detention as it relates to the detention. Correct me if I'm wrong. It's 10% above
Above
the
the
requirements for the
city.
city, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And as far as the drainage,
25%.
they're gonna move the drainage that's going to leave the property 25 feet back from the property line and incorporate a weir system in that. Is that accurate?
Yes, and dissipators.
Pardon me?
Dissipators?
Dissipators.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you, sir.
All storm events would be accounted for.
In the did you get that too? Okay.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Motion carries. Great discussion, ladies and gentlemen, great discussion. Thank you guys for being here. Okay, Mr. Lyon, number 8.
PC 2071, discussion and consideration approval of the replat of Lot 3, Block 2 of the Harper Edition, described as part of the Northwest Quarter, Section 31, Township 12, North Range 1 West, addressed as 910 North Poplar Lane. Mr. Harless.
Thank you, Mr. Lyon. This is just south of Northeast 10th on Popular. This request is to divide one 2.15 acre existing lot into 3 lots for residential development. The pre-application meeting for this replat was held on November 10th, 2020. There is one existing home on the southernmost portion of the lot. The area of request is platted as Lot 3, Block 2 of Harper Edition. The proposed replat shows Lot 3A, 3B, and 3C. All proposed lots meet minimum standards regarding lot size. If the replat application is approved, the applicant is responsible for bringing the curb and gutter along the frontage to city standards, as well as the sidewalks along the frontage of all proposed lots. All proposed lots have access to city sewer and city water along the frontage. The applicant has agreed to fulfill all half-street improvements requirements, including curb and gutter and sidewalk along the frontage of the 3 proposed lots. This was recommended approval by the Planning Commission. The replat is at the discretion of the City Council. I would be glad to answer any questions.
So the applicant is not asking for any variances, sidewalks, curb and guttering, everything he's good with?
I think he wanted to get on with it because he was there for the discussion that was going on with the other developers.
Is the applicant here? Are you the applicant? Come forward and address the council. Could you state your name and address?
Rodney Tyra, 910 North Poplar.
Thank you for not fighting us on the curb and guttering and the sidewalks, and we appreciate it because that's been a contentious issue for the last 5 years, and so thank you for being here. Do you have anything other to add to the discussion?
No, sir.
Does anyone have any questions of the applicant? The chair would entertain a motion to approve.
Move to approve.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Thank you for being here, sir. We appreciate it. Okay. Mr. Lyon.
Item number 9, Mayor, Mr. Mayor. Discussion, consideration of presentation by W.D. Ballou, Walter Day Ballou, PhDP, on the comprehensive review of the Midwest City Police Department jail operations. If you all recall, we engaged Dr. Blue some time ago regarding taking a look at our jail operations and doing a comprehensive analytical study of really the fiscal operations and any potential recommendations on kind of future options with the jail and any other recommendations that Dr. Blue would discover. So, EB.
Thank you, Mr. Lyon. Each of you should have a copy of the report in your council packet. I'm not going to try to read it to you. I'm not necessarily going to assume that you've read it, but I would like to just give you a brief overview of the findings. The original cost analysis and comprehensive plan that was proposed is exactly what we've done. We haven't deviated from that. There wasn't any scope creep. There weren't any additions or corrections that had to be made. And so it was a three-part study, and the discovery section had 5 pieces to it, and that's all included in your tab 1, if you're wondering what those 5 things were. And it was primarily a cost analysis, and it looked at 5 and 10-year trends and got us to the point where we could take an honest look at what our going forward options were. Phase 2 was that piece of it where we took all of the discovery from phase 1. We took the various interviews that had been done with both patrol and county and legal and court and your judge and everybody that was brought in to the interview process to gain information. And we tried to consolidate that in a meaningful manner so that it represented a good snapshot of where we are right now. So that got done in phase 2. And then the outcome of the phase 2 meeting was really to try to get to the point where we could consider various options. And that's what I'd like to talk to you all this evening about, is how that went. And clearly, you could be all over the map here because there weren't any bad ideas. In other words, we're trying to encourage people to think outside the box and not just be completely confined by just because we've done something a certain way for 50 years. That means that's what we're going to do going forward, and we certainly didn't do that. But our first consideration was kind of a radical one, but on the other hand, it's one I think people on this horseshoe would have probably asked, and that is, why don't we just close the Midwest City Jail and have an expanded MOU with county? And certainly, that has to be addressed at some level. And we did meet with John Michael Williams, and we've talked to county, and you don't really have to go and have private sit-down sessions with those people to know what's going on. All you got to do is watch the 6 o'clock news. And so I took a sentence right out of the report, and I said, new administration, serious shortcomings in their physical plant, and financial and reorganization problems make this an improbable option for the city until after 2022. I think here's the way I approached it, and I think this is the way city staff approached it, and I think hopefully you'll see the wisdom in that. There are so many things down there that are wrong right now that I don't think in good conscience, if I was a patrol officer, I'd want to take the person I just arrested down there. And maybe that's too critical. That's certainly harsh. And it sounds horrible, but there's just some things going on down there that people in this room can't fix. So I'd like to keep it under our roof where we can fix it. And if we've got a problem, then we'll address it and we'll make it right. And so that I stopped at that point in time. In the report, you can read a pretty detailed discussion where I looked at $44.61 a day, and that's what we have to pay if we take a prisoner to the county. If we just took all of our prisoners down there, what would that cost the city? And it looks like on the surface we'd save about $300,000. But that's not right, okay? There's so many unintended consequences associated with that decision, some of which I spoke of. The additional time it takes, the having to bring people back for physical appearance in the court when it's 10 miles away, the getting in and out, all the administrative details that goes on and on and on, which really wasn't a part of this study, but it surfaced so quickly. So I just did the real quick back of the envelope calculation, and just the additional patrol officers we need and the overhead for a FTE position eats up that savings so fast that it's really not savings. So don't go chasing that $300,000 thinking it's there, okay? Second recommendation was, well, let's upgrade the Midwest City facility with expanded interagency offerings. Okay, so we have 6 interagencies we work with now. The base and Choctaw, Hara, Jones, Nakoma Park, Forest Park. Those interagency agreements do bring us prisoners, and they work. In fact, if you look at the budget for the last 5 years, holds for other agencies has actually increased, okay? So they take advantage of that. They make no bones about it. They would rather bring their prisoner here than go to county. It's just faster, it's better for everybody. So I have, in that arena, I said there's a couple of things we really, if we can look at, I think we can make some gains here that will work to everybody's advantage. First of all, in the budget for the jail, I reviewed it for the last 5 years, and the capital expenditures that we spend over there have ranged all the way from 0 in some years to as much as $25,000 in some years. And so, in other words, it's kind of hard to budget, isn't it? And I recommended that, given the age of the facility and given the fact that it's improbable that you can continue to operate in a building that's that old without having some serious capital improvements necessary, and given the fact that we even already know about some improvements that need to be made, and we really can't because the money just isn't available, that we create a sinking fund in our budget for the jail. Depending on where you work and where you live, a sinking fund really is an accountant's way of saying, let's plan for a depreciated asset that at some point in time is going to fall over on its back dead, and we're going to have to replace, and we won't have the money to do it. So let's try to anticipate that event. The whole concept of a sinking fund. So you'll find in the report that in my pro forma going forward budget for the next 5 years, I recommended a $40,000 sinking fund. Now the truth is that's not enough, okay, but it's a starting point. It might scare you if I told you what the real amount ought to be, but even the real amount's achievable, okay? It's not out of our reach. And so that's one recommendation, and just as an example, something that was brought up in the report that you've probably already read about was the plumbing in the jail is just marginal. I mean, it's been fixed with Band-Aids rather than fixed permanently the right way, and for a lot of good reasons. Those have been good decisions. I mean, I made some of those decisions when I was still here, 10 years ago. And so we can come up with a list of things that will gladly embrace the concept of a sinking fund, but it'll also improve our jail and it'll make us a better place going forward, and it just needs to be done regardless of what we do. From extreme something on the right to extreme on the left, it doesn't matter. You can't ignore the fact that the physical plant needs some attention. So that's one recommendation, and by the way, the city management agrees with me on that, and we think it's appropriate, and I've talked to the chief about it, and we have some ways that we think we can make that happen without it being too painful. Now, another thing we can do, interagency, I've already mentioned this, interagency agreements are increasing, but they're going up. That revenue is going up. We can change one sentence in our ordinance with interagencies, and we can turn that into between $25,000 and $50,000 a year. And that sentence basically says that if we book someone into the jail, there's a booking fee of $30. And if that prisoner stays more than 11 hours at a cost of $2.50 an hour, we'll offset their daily charge with their booking fee. Only if they stay more than 11 hours, because if they stay less than that, well, then the booking fee covers whatever exposure we had to that prisoner. If we change that to say that for prisoners held longer than 11 hours, that sentence goes away. We're not going to refund your booking fee at that point in time. We're just going to go ahead and say, look, this is part of the cost of doing business. Because think about it, the booking fee is the cost of doing business. You don't get that person ingressed or egressed out of the jail without some administrative burden and overhead. I mean, if you don't believe that, go to county and try to get in and out of there in a hurry. You know, it's a arduous process. So it's reasonable that we would tell the city that, and that we would kind of drop that out of our interagency agreement, and that would net us quite a few dollars. And that would be more than enough to offset this sinking fund that I'm talking about, just that one move. So I think, and once again, I've talked to staff about this. I believe it's doable. I don't believe that it would be offensive to the other agencies. I believe they look at the quality of what they get here in the Midwest City Jail compared to their alternative of going to county, and it'll be a non-event, okay? But, I can't speak for them. We can only do it and see what kind of response we get. I don't think we're going to break the bank here for anybody. And so that's a couple of starting places right there, just a couple of things. If you look at my pro forma budget going forward for the next 5 years, it costs about $500,000 to run the jail. It's not a cash cow. It's not a profit center. It never will be, and it never was intended to be. So that's the true cost of running it. We can do some other things in this last suggested recommendation that will help us gain a little bit better edge on some things, and let me just mention them. We talked about a hybrid model. Instead of just closing down and sending our prisoners to county, I mean, that's kind of brute force on one extreme. Encouraging interagency agreement, well, I don't think raising the price encourages it, but I don't think it's going to give us a big setback either. Staff has looked at, since our average occupancy's down from 30 to 15, and by the way, I covered in the report why it's down. It's primarily down due to Judge David Howe. He has a different philosophy on setting people down. And if you think it through it, it's well thought out. And you set somebody down, then they are costing the city $90 a day. They can't be working a job or doing anything else to support their livelihood. So if they've already dug a hole for themselves, it's just going to get deeper the longer they sit in that jail. And David Howe is very effectively worked through some programs that will let the city get what they need as a result of what they've done, whatever crime they've committed, and keep the people from sitting out their time in jail. And it's worked. And when the head count drops to 15, a lot of things change. Okay, first of all, you don't need as many phone cards. Secondly, your incarceration fees go down. A lot of things that you'd say, well, that's a bad deal. No, it's not a bad deal, because Incarceration fees going down, I've already got that figured in your budget. I show that they're going down, and we live with that situation. What you can do is go back to the state and say, we don't have as high of average occupancy as we used to. Is there a chance we can look at our budgeted staffing and we don't need 14 people anymore? Is there a chance? And of course, that's covered very closely by both state and federal regulations. So we don't just get to go in and say, well, I'm going to run this jail with 10 people instead of 14. That's monitored very carefully. And you got to remember, this is a 24/7 operation. So when you're thinking, why in the world do you need 14 people to run a jail? I think if you think about it very long, you'll figure it out, okay? It is time consuming, and there are a lot of moving parts down there. But I think we probably can cut it back a little bit. And here's the reason I say that. In the last 5 years, we haven't ever had all 14 people hired. We've had staffing that ranged all the way from 8 to 10 and a half, just because of the people that are available. Just, can you hire the right staff to run it? And we've done that, and we've managed to operate it with an average of 10 people. So Chief Claves is looking into that. We think, even though the historical budgeted number is higher, that there's some possible gains to be made here. And you can't do a study like this without some point in time someone holding up their hand and saying, let's privatize our jail. You know, it just always comes up. And I've got a little bit of experience in a previous life with working with the Department of Justice in privatized jails that are run by Wackenhut and run by some large organizations. And I can tell you this always surfaces at some point in the analysis. Privatization has got a problem. We don't have to make a profit here at the city, and we don't have to pay taxes. You can't privatize with anybody that doesn't have to do with both of those. If you add profit and taxation into your equation, you almost always come up with a cost that's 25 to 30% higher than the one you've got right now. And the only time that doesn't happen is when the government agency that you're trying to privatize is way out of control and they don't have any cost control mechanisms in place, and that doesn't apply to us, okay? So I think privatization, as good as it sounds, you're chasing a rainbow, okay? So I didn't personally rule it out, but I ruled it out with the help of some other people that were working with me on the study. And the last thing, I guess, is that there were other things that were turned over, rocks that were turned over, and things that were discovered in this process that are really way too detailed for a presentation like this on the Horseshoe. Doesn't mean I'm trying to duck them. Most of the time, they were in the report. In fact, they are in the report. I'm just not going to force feed them to you right now because I think this is really all you needed to hear. But having said that, I've done all the talking, so are there any questions, Mr. Mayor or Council?
Well, first off, thank you, Mr. Wood, for taking the time. I know I read through your report twice. That's the most accurate and detailed look at our jail that I've ever seen. Obviously, you know, looking forward, we're going to have to make some decisions. I personally am bitterly opposed to closing our jail. But, you know, we obviously have to do what's best for the city and the police department. And until the county jail gets their issues solved, I've personally seen the issues down there. I know they're nowhere near close to solving those. No. I also know that at some point in time, there's going to be a tax increase on the taxpayers of Oklahoma County to build a new jail. And it just goes on and on with them. And us keeping our control on what comes in, it just makes perfect sense until they get their act together. We've had our act together for a long time. They need to get their act together. So with that being said, I appreciate all the hard work that you put into this and taking this task on. Does anybody have any questions of Mr. Ballou?
If we were a large enough city to be a court of record, would that make our jail more attractive to other people to want to house their prisoners here so they could also have court here?
There's a couple of pieces to answer that question. First of all, that was one of the first questions I asked, what we have to do to become a court of record, because I didn't like losing the revenue from the DUIs. In the report, you'll find out that crime reform that happened in 2017 and 18, which primarily were DUIs and CDS marijuana laws, cost us $300,000 in revenue in our court system. Of course, we don't arrest DUIs now. They go to county, because otherwise we're not a court of record, and so that's why by state statute, they have to go down there now. So there's a couple of pieces here. I can't remember, Tim, exactly. You and I discussed this in greater detail, but maybe the chief should answer this question, if he will. Can you remember exactly what we would have to do to become a court of record? I've got those notes.
We would have to change the Oklahoma statutes
Right.
and become, because the population.
Yes, it's a
We're below
population limitation.
population issue.
Yeah.
Right, we'd have to be 100,000 or more, a city of 100,000 or more.
Yeah, I think it's
There's only
Heather, I'm
two-
sorry, I should have
There's only
just asked
two
you.
cities that are courts of record in the
Okay.
state, Tulsa and Oklahoma City.
So that's not going to happen, okay? So, but yes, the answer is, if we were, some things could be different. And some of the criminal justice reform.
Never mind my question. We're not going to be able to get to be a court of record, so no use chasing that down a rabbit hole at 9 o'clock at night.
Unless we change statute.
Well, we ain't going to change that.
Tonight.
Oh,
Well,
that's
nothing. I mean, we did address that, Sean, in all of our discussions, because when I had a long half-day meeting with the court, and Heather was there, I mean, we talked about a lot of things, and there's just some things we're not going to change. Not easily going to change. I don't feel like they're in our control, and so you kind of have a tendency to focus on the things that are in your control. So, anything else? Rick, you?
Again, thank you, Mr. Ballou. Go ahead, Rick, I'm sorry.
Since we're only charging $30 a day, is there any reason, especially with county charging $44 a day to hold prisoners? Is there any reason, or would you even consider recommending that we increase our fees that we charge the 6 cities that we do business with?
Well,
At some point.
yeah, no, that's certainly always on the table. I mean, you can change it's $2.50 an hour for each hour you hold a prisoner, which calculates your daily rate. I think our booking fee is pretty reasonable. But it doesn't mean we shouldn't look at it. But the $2.50 an hour thing, it's been set by our city ordinance now, and I probably should be able to give you the date on that, and I can't. Do you remember the date we set the ordinance? It's been several
long
years.
time ago.
It's been a while. So good point, Rick. That's
Any reason to increase the $2.50?
absolutely. There's always a reason. What hasn't gone up in 5 or 10 years? Everything.
So I guess from this point, Dr. Blue has created some analytics here that have never been done here before, like the mayor said. I mean, when you see some of these charts in here towards the end of this report, they just look like a bar chart. They just look like some, a simple spreadsheet. Well, they're not. They're those numbers. We have not been able to find those numbers, so to speak. I mean, they're so scattered around through our system, to be able to put them all together and put them on a single sheet of page that you can now analyze gives us some tools now to move forward. And we'll bring some of this back to the ordinance review committee too, some of the recommendations Dave has, but we'll need to do some, we should continuously, and I'm sure that Chief Claves does this, is look at our rates and make sure that, they're staying up with our inflation, because our costs aren't staying the same, and that, really every couple of years they need to be amended. And we did that not too long ago, but anyway, we'll continue to do that, and this will drive an internal review now that we haven't really had yet. Very good.
Well,
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Dave dug
Thank
down
you.
in a stack of
Yeah.
reports that high to come up
I
with.
did ask the city, I hope I'm not the reason that Yolanda Whitlow went to Edmond, but
You better.
Hey, you don't need to laugh at that. That's enough. I asked her to generate a lot of reports that she had never generated before. And Cognos, fortunately, we have the power in our software here in the city, in Encode and Cognos, to do that. But sometimes I didn't know what I was asking for, and I'd get back this much, And I told her, I said, if you ran the report, I'm going to read every line of it. And it was painful, okay? But it did show us what Tim's saying, is that there's some things that we hadn't run the metrics on, and we hadn't watched closely. And we didn't, there's 125 different places the money goes after you get your person to pay their citation over there. The state's got their handout, the drug commission's got their, Cleats got their handout. It goes everywhere. And you gotta track all that stuff down, or I did, because I couldn't make it make sense. That's the last chart in your report, by the way, if you'd like to look at it. So, no other questions?
Anyone have any other questions?
You're welcome.
The chair would entertain a motion to approve the report.
Motion to approve the report. Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you.
Again, thank you, Mr. Blue. Okay, item number 10.
Discussion and consideration of awarding the bid and entering into a contract with United Golf LLC for the renovation of John Conrad Regional Golf Course in the total amount of $3,563,555.16, which includes the base bid in the amount of the $3,532,450.16, and an alternate number A2, the driving range floor shaping in the amount of $54.15. Alternate number A3, driving range drainage for $48.10. Alternative number A5, driving range Astro Spriggs, $58.80. And alternate number A13, pump house refurbishment, one item at $15,000. Mr. Sullivan.
Honorable Mayor and Council, it's hard to follow the smartest man that I know on this planet, Dr. Dave Ballou. But this little item pales in comparison to that, but I will say that we're very excited about this project. I have Jeff Evans with me here this evening from Randy Heckenkamber Golf Course Design. If you have any questions about my recommendation, I'd be glad to answer them.
So when does the golf course shut down?
We are going to shut it as soon as the general contractor, we can execute all documents and the general contractor can deploy equipment. Our goal is on or before March the 1st. Yes, we have been telling everybody for over a year, March 1st, 21 is the date. So we are very, Jeff, do you have anything you want to add to my recommendation?
Talking with the contractor as soon as February 15th if we can get all contracts in place.
Oh, wow.
Takes us a while to get all these documents executed, so the general contractor is anxious to get to work, but he might be a little more ambitious than I can.
Do it by Valentine's Day, I'm sure you'll make some wives happy.
That's a great idea, Councilman. That is a great idea. But we are very excited. We thank the mayor, the council, the citizens of Midwest City who voted to tax themselves to do this renovation. These are exciting times in our city, and we're ready to go.
I have one question. Last time we had a conversation on the renovation, there was some discussion about trying to prioritize like the renovations to the driving range so that we could reopen the driving range earlier than we could reopen the course. Is that still the plan, or?
That is something that we do intend to work with the general contractor to try to achieve, yes.
Which will
Yes,
help the
that would
schools.
be next
Yeah.
winter about this time is when the golf teams, the high school golf teams start their practice. And we hope to get that knocked out so that we can. A lot of it will depend on weather and getting the sprigs grown in this summer.
Any further questions?
Did I cover it okay, Jeff? Jeff has sat through this, and he's going to drive back to Tulsa tonight, so I appreciate Jeff's, thank you for being here, sir, and.
Chair, do you intend a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Got a motion, a second, discussion. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you.
Abstention, motion carries, and on with the golf course.
Thank you both very much.
It's a lot of work to get to that point.
Ladies and gentlemen, move into new business public discussion of the agenda. Does anyone have anything to bring before council? We do have an executive session attached to this agenda, Mr. Lyon.
Are we going to just go into recess?
We're going to recess, do the rest of the agendas, and come back.
Okay.
Yeah, why don't you recess now, so have it recess?
Yeah. Let me read it real, but I need to read it, don't I, first?
Yeah.
No, he can recess before, and then you read it when you come back in.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Let's go then.
6 1, half dozen other. I entertain a motion to recess.
Motion to recess.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'm sure there's no opposition. I now call to order the Midwest City Municipal Authority. We have a consent agenda. You know what the consent agenda is all about. I'd entertain a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
All in favor indicate by saying aye. Opposed? Abstention? Move into the new business public discussion. Does anyone have anything to bring forth authority? Hearing none, we're hereby adjourned. I call to order the City of Midwest City Memorial Hospital Authority. We have a consent agenda, and I entertain a motion to approve. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Motion carries. We have 3 discussion items. Mr. Lyon.
No action on one.
No action on one.
2, discussion and consideration of approving enter into engagement letter with Grant Thornton LLP to perform a GAAP gap audit for the calendar year ending December 31st, 2020 for Centertown Center 2 LLC in amount not to exceed $28,100 plus 7% administrative fee of $1,967. Authorize the city manager or finance director act on behalf of the authority during the audit, provide information, oversee the audit process, and make determinations as required. Are there any questions?
Motion to approve.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Motion carries. Next item.
Item 3, discussion and consideration to authorize Savory Development LLC to submit construction documents and a building permit application for lots 8 through 10, Block 1, replat of Atkinson Heights Edition, AKA 2500 South Air Depot Boulevard, on behalf of Midwest City Memorial Hospital Authority. Mr. Coleman.
Good morning, Chairman, or good afternoon, or evening as it is, lost track. You may remember we approved, or you all approved a contract to sell 2500 South Air Depot in early December. And Savory Foods wants assurance that they'll be able to get a building permit for their Swig drive-in before they close on the property. And the only way really to do that is to get construction documents that are of quality where they can be approved and they know that they can get the permit. And the only way to do that is for you all to approve them to apply on behalf of us, even though we're not going to build anything. It'll go to them once it sells.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Motion carried. Thank you, Mr. Coleman.
That's it.
And move into new business public discussion. Does anyone have anything to bring before the authority? Hearing or seeing none, we're hereby adjourned. And I call to order the Midwest City Economic Development Commission. We have a consent agenda. Move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Motion carries. New business public discussion. Anyone have anything to bring before the authority? Hearing or seeing none, we are hereby adjourned. I call to order the Midwest City Special Economic Development Authority. We have two discussion items. Mr. Lyons.
Discussion consideration to approve the minutes of November 10th, 2020 special meeting as submitted.
Motion to approve.
Motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstention. Motion carries. Item number 2.
Discussion consideration approving enter-into engagement letters with Grant Thornton LLP to perform gap audits for the calendar year ending December 31st, 2020 for One Sooner Town Center LLC, STC Lowe's LLC in an amount not to exceed $46,000 plus 7% administrative fee of $3,262. To STC Sooner Town Center 2 LLC in an amount not to exceed $28,100 plus 7% administrative fee of $1967, and authorizing city manager and/or finance director act on behalf of the authority during the audits to provide information, oversee the audit process, and make determinations as required.
Motion and a second. All in favor, indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstention. Motion carries. Is there any, we move into public discussion. Anyone have anything to bring before the authority? Hearing or seeing none, we're hereby adjourned. I need a motion to reconvene the Midwest City Council.
Oh, okay.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
We're hereby reconvened and now in executive session.
You want me to read it or not?
I don't care. He didn't give you the chance to read it,
Well,
but you
that's
should.
Well, let me read it really quick. Discussion and consideration to executive sessions allowed under 25 OS 307B2. Discuss negotiations concerning employees' representatives, employee groups, and an open session authorizing the city manager to take action as appropriate based on the discussion in executive session.
Oh, you did a great job, Tim. Oh, thank you.
I can read.
Now we have an executive session.